whatever the humidity's been recently, right?
Right.
It's been up to 50%, which, you know, for California, for LA is just, it's unheard of. So I'm sure that's what's making it even worse, but I feel like the Wicked Witch of the West. I'm melting. So I will stop my video and mute and wait for the meeting to begin.
All right. We'll see you in just a little bit then.
Great to see you.
You too. Bye-bye.
Hey, David, we're getting my audio.
Hi, Ed. Yes, I am getting your audio.
Okay, and I think we now have video.
Did you want to hike? I can see you. Did you want to share your screen for your presentation? Make sure that's working.
Let's do that if I could.
Sure.
See that?
Yes, there we go.
Okay, we are good to go.
Perfect. Okay, good to go. See you in a bit.
Off video. Okay, thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
Hi, David.
Oh, hi, Rogerio.
I need to reverse my background.
No, you don't. You're
No, you're good.
You're good.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And I can hear you, see you, so everything's good on your end.
Great, thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
Hi, Gillig. Can I test my PowerPoint, please?
Sure. Let me stop. There you go. Go for it.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
And Ed is already here and he's tested his, so he's good to go for your item.
Great. Thank you. Can you see that okay?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay. That's all I need. Thank you.
Okay. You're welcome.
Hello, David, are you there?
Yes, hi, Michael.
Hi, David.
Okay, I can see you. Let me, hang on. A little cramped here. Okay, I can hear you. I can see you. Your logo is good, so you are good to go.
Thank you.
Okay, see you in just a little bit.
Good evening.
Hi, Kimberly.
Hi,
Hi, and same for you. I can hear you, see you, and your logo is good.
thank you.
So we'll see you in just a bit.
Hi, David. I just want to know if you can see and hear me right now.
Hi, Stacy. Yes, I
Hi.
can see you, and your logo is there, and I can hear you. You're good to go.
Great. Thanks very much. See you
Okay,
shortly.
see you in just a minute. And Chair, it is 6:30.
All
If we
right.
can have all commissioners on screen. And we are live broadcast. Everything is a go on CATV up part.
Great. Thank you. Making sure we have all of our commissioners here. Javier, invited. And we are absent Vice Chair Thomas tonight. Okay.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. Great. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. In an effort to protect public health and prevent the spread of COVID-19, AB 361 has authorized public meetings to take place via teleconference because state and local officials are recommending measures to promote social distancing. This Planning Commission meeting is being conducted by a teleconference on the city's website and is also provided on a wide array of streaming media platforms to offer access to the public to the fullest extent possible. WehoTV staff have confirmed that this Planning Commission meeting is currently streaming successfully on Spectrum Channel 10 and online at weho.org/WehoTV. In addition, and as a courtesy, this meeting is also successfully streaming on the city's YouTube channel at youtube.com/WehoTV and on Roku, Apple TV, Fire TV, and Android TV. WehoTV staff monitor this broadcast on all platforms throughout the meeting and will notify the Planning Commission secretary should broadcast disruptions arise. Please do not interrupt the live meeting by calling or texting the planning commissioners about difficulties viewing the meeting. In addition, you may call in to listen to this meeting by dialing 669-900-6833 The meeting ID is 822-2389-5576, and then press the pound sign. Please understand that internet speeds, device reliability, third-party platform reliability, and individual or personal technical issues are out of the scope of this broadcast. If you're experiencing viewing difficulties while watching this live stream, please reload the page or visit weho.org/WehoTV to access our official live stream and to view a list of other available streaming options and a guide to troubleshoot your connection. If you continue to experience difficulties, you can also call 323-848-3151. The West Hollywood Planning Commission acknowledges that the land on which we gather, and that is currently known as the City of West Hollywood, is the occupied, unceded, seized territory of the Gabrielino, Tongva, and Kizh peoples. So with that, I am calling this meeting of the West Hollywood Planning Commission to order. Welcome, everyone. It is Thursday, September 1st. This is a regularly scheduled meeting. Our second item of business is the Pledge of Allegiance. And if she would be so kind, I would like to ask our most recently appointed commissioner, Ms. Kimberly Copeland, to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Thank you for being game to do that, as I completely did not ask you if you would be up for it prior to our meeting. So thank you for being a good sport about it, Commissioner Copeland. We also have an exciting third item this evening. That is the administration of the oath of office to newly appointed Planning Commission member Eric J. Matos. So during this time, during the swearing in, all of the commissioners will need to mute and turn off their cameras. The only people who should be on camera and on audio at this time should be the council member who will be swearing us in. I believe that will be Mayor Meister. Hello. And Eric. So with that, I'm going to do as I just instructed.
Thank you, Chair Jones. I'm very happy to be here this evening. Eric, if you will raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Eric Matos, do solemnly swear
I, Eric Matos, do solemnly swear
that while serving in the office as a member of the Planning Commission of the City of West Hollywood,
that while serving in the office as a member of the Planning Commission of the City of West Hollywood,
that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States
that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California,
and the Constitution of the State of California,
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
to the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California,
to the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California,
that I take this obligation freely
that I take this obligation freely
without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion,
without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion,
and that I will well and faithfully
then that I will well and faithfully
discharge the duties
discharge the duties
upon which I am about to enter.
upon which I am about to enter.
Congratulations
Thank you, Mayor.
and good luck. Thank you, everyone.
Welcome, Commissioner Matos. Very happy to have you. And we are, for the first time in several months, a full commission, minus Vice Chair Thomas, who was not able to be with us this evening. And with that, I would like to ask our secretary, Mr. Gillig, to call roll, please.
Thank you and good evening, commissioners. As Chair Jones stated, Vice Chair Thomas is absent tonight, so all roll call votes will reflect that. Commissioner Carvalero,
Here.
Commissioner Copeland,
Here.
Commissioner Gregoire,
Here.
Commissioner Lombardi,
Here.
Commissioner Matos,
Here.
Chair Jones,
Here.
and we do have a quorum.
Great, thank you. Item 5 is approval of the agenda. Do I have any requests for changes or a motion to approve the agenda as it is currently published?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
Great, thank you. David, can you please call roll?
Thank you. Commissioner Matos,
Aye.
Commissioner Lombardi,
Aye.
Commissioner Gregoire,
Aye.
Commissioner Copeland,
Aye.
Commissioner Carvalero,
Aye.
Chair Jones,
Aye.
and the motion passes, noting 6 ayes, approving the agenda as presented for September 1st, 2022.
Thank you. Item 6 is approval of the minutes. Make sure these weren't requested to be continued before I go forth. Yes, they are there. All right. Yes, so do I have any requests for corrections or changes to the minutes, or do I have a motion to approve them as is?
Motion to approve.
I'll second.
Thank you. Commissioner Matos,
I'm going to abstain because I was not a part of the commission at that time.
thank you, noted. Commissioner Lombardi,
Yes.
Commissioner Gregoire,
I too will abstain as I missed that meeting.
thank you, noted. Commissioner Copeland,
Aye.
Commissioner Carvalero,
Aye.
Chair Jones,
Aye.
and the motion passes, noting Commissioner Matos and Commissioner Gregoire abstaining for approving the minutes as presented for August 18th, 2022.
Thank you. Item 7 is public comment. If there is anyone in the audience or virtual audience with us this evening who would like to give a public comment that is not related to any of the items that we are hearing tonight, you may do so now, or you may do so at the public comment portion at the end of the meeting. David, do we have any public speakers?
Actually, I do. I have 2 that have requested to speak. Our first speaker will be Stephanie Harker. She'll be followed by Michael Wolkolevich.
Good evening, Stephanie Harker, City of West Hollywood. Here's my question to the commissioners, the staff, and the City Council of West Hollywood, and the developers. When is my question. When are we going to build housing of any kind that individuals or families making at least $70,000 to $80,000 per year can actually afford? In California, the fair market rent for a 2-bedroom apartment at the moment is $2,028. That is according to a report from July 28th, 2022 by the National Low Income Housing Coalition. In order to afford the rent and utilities without paying more than 30% of income on housing, a household must earn $6,700 a month, or $81,113 per year. It breaks down to an hourly wage of $39 an hour. I believe in West Hollywood, those numbers are all higher. The going rate, at least on the east side near Plummer Park at the moment for a 1-bedroom is now renting for $2,000. Do the math, folks. Only the rich can live here now, unless you are in a rent-stabilized apartment. New places being built, such as the units in item 11B, are unaffordable to the average person. The project, like so many others, is taking away from our affordable rent-stabilized units. When our housing element is asking for 4,000 new units in the next 8 years. Whatever happened to the California state's 1-for-1? When you demolish a rent-stabilized unit, you must provide an equal number of affordable units in your new project. When will West Hollywood truly build truly affordable housing? At the present moment in time, no one making minimum wage can afford to even our most affordable housing. You need to be making twice minimum wage. So unless people can make that a job at a job in West Hollywood, I don't know what they're going to do. Again, I ask you as commissioners, When will this change, or is the writing on the wall? Quote, unless you have a lot of money, don't move to West Hollywood. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie. Our next speaker will be Michael Wokulevich. Michael, if you're on the line, if you're calling in, *6 for us, and you'll have 3 minutes.
Yes, David, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead, Michael.
Okay. Good evening, Planning Commission staff and members in the public. The name is Michael Wokulevich. I trust yesterday you were aware of this historical context study and evaluation that was supposed to be the first dip into evaluating racial segregation and discriminatory policies within the area, both prior to cityhood, 1984, and thereafter. Maybe you all did not participate, even though institutions of yesteryear, such as redlining, really had, their reign under certain planning commissions. But then again, maybe you had a heads up as to how paper thin and lightweight the presentation was going to be. With that, I can't speak, obviously, for discriminatory policies within the 19th century, but what I can tell you is this. In the immediate years after cityhood, a lot of housing, which was brought online as affordable, became available to a specific population, and that was Russian speaking. The reason why? Social services within West Hollywood predominantly acknowledged that population and that population only. And those in control only spoke to their fellow person. They didn't advise or bring up to date other people within the community as far as possibilities coming up for housing. And as far as housing for other sectors such as HIV/AIDS, what I do know is this. Harper Community, that was done in the late 80s, as well as the WHCHC project at Laurel and Norton. Both of those projects took money that came out of the Century Freeway funds back in the day when they were extending that freeway, the I-105, down towards LAX. That money was originally intended for communities displaced and affected by the expansion of that freeway. How West Hollywood eventually got their hands onto some of that money is still a mystery. Coming in a little bit more up to date, in 2014, again, a 30-year covenant for, I believe it was 27 affordable units of multiple.
Thank you, Michael.
Sounds like my time is up.
Yes. And our next speaker will be Kathy Blavis. And right now she is our last speaker. If there is anybody else on the platform that would like to make a comment, a general comment, *9 for me if you're calling in, or just use the raise hand feature. Go ahead, Kathy. You have 3 minutes.
Hi, thank you. Thank you, David. Kathy Blavis, City of West Hollywood. I too am calling in with regard to questioning whatever happened to the state law that requires replacement 1-to-1 when a rent stabilized tenant is forced out of a property. I remember when Sheila Lightfoot was the commissioner, that was a question she asked over and over and over again. And here we are some 6, 7, 8 years later, still asking the same question. So that concerns me quite a bit. The other thing is with regard to development. I remember years ago, many years ago, when the East Side was not considered a desirable place to build. And then one by one, places were torn down, developers came in, and luxury housing was built. Some affordable, yes. I mean, there's quite a few affordable housing units over at Movie Town Plaza. But for the most part, what we are seeing as a city is an influx of luxury housing. And as Stephanie Harker stated, there's no place really for quote unquote workforce housing. And I don't know what, if anything, this commission can do to take that into consideration, but we desperately need more affordable in the sense of apartments that working class people can afford, and no more luxury apartments. So it concerns me that we're, again, so many years later, having the same problems and the same lack of replacing one to one. And I think it's time that as a commission, ideally, if you have any say in that matter, that you speak up. So thank you for allowing me to speak, and congratulations to both new Commissioner Copeland and Commissioner Matos. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kathy. And Chair, we do have one final speaker calling in from 3468, your last digits. Go ahead and unmute yourself, *6.
And please state your name and city of residence before speaking.
And you have 3 minutes.
Hi, good evening, Chair, Vice Chair, and Commissioners. My name is Danny Hang, and I'm a business license commissioner. However, tonight I'm speaking as a resident of West Hollywood, and I'm sitting here with Todd Hallman, Chair of the Public Safety Commission. We just wanted to call and congratulate Commissioner Matos on his appointment to the Planning Commission. He brings a wealth of knowledge. He's a very fast learner, and you guys will work great well together. Congratulations, Todd. I'm sorry, congratulations, Eric. Here's Todd. Oh, Todd has mouth. Congratulations. Congratulations, Eric. Thank you.
Thank you. And Chair, that is our last public speaker.
Thank you very much. Item 8 is the director's report.
John Kehoe was out of the office today, so he will not have a report this evening.
Okay. Thank you, Jennifer. Moving right along. Item 9 is item from commissioners who would like to speak. Commissioner Gregoire, please go ahead.
I just want to welcome Commissioners Copeland and Matos. I missed last meeting. I didn't get a chance to officially welcome Commissioner Copeland as well. So welcome to the commission. We look forward to working with you.
Thank you very much. Would anyone else like to speak? Commissioner Copeland.
Hi, I just wanted to welcome the other new kid on the block here, Commissioner Matos. It's good to have you on board, and look forward to meeting with you and working with you, and welcome. Good to see you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Lombardi.
Likewise, congratulations, Commissioner Matos. It's great to have you here, and I look forward to working with you. And I'm excited that hopefully one of these meetings coming up soon, we'll have 7 of us here. We're almost there. Probably, we're filled, all the slots are filled now. So I'm really excited, and I'm excited to be working with you. Congratulations.
Thank you, Commissioner Lombardi.
Thank you. Commissioner Caballero.
Welcome, Commissioner Matos. I look forward to working with you, and I know you're going to be a welcome and valuable member of this commission.
Thank you, Commissioner Caballero.
And as is the tradition of the West Hollywood Planning Commission, I would be remiss if I did not also very genuinely and warmly welcome you to the Planning Commission. We are very happy to have you and Commissioner Copeland, and we are a fully appointed commission once again. The fellowship of the Planning Commission, if you will. And again, we do miss Commissioner Vice Chair Thomas this evening, but very much looking forward to working with you, and so happy to have you here. So thank you.
Thank you, Chair Jones.
Item 10 is consent calendar. There is none. And with that, we will move right into our first public hearing. Item 11A is 933 North Spalding Avenue. This is a public hearing to consider a request to subdivide a 3-story, 5-unit residential building into a common interest development for the property located at 933 North Spalding Avenue in our fair city. And I will toss this over to staff to give their report.
Thank you. Let me go ahead and share my screen. Okay, is everyone able to see my presentation?
Yes, you're good to go.
All right, perfect, thank you. Good evening, Chair and Commissioners. My name is Derek Purification, Associate Planner for the City of West Hollywood. The item before you is item 11A, which is the request for a tentative tract map for the subdivision of a 3-story, 5-unit multifamily development. The subject property is located on the west side of Spalding Avenue with Romaine Street to the north and Willoughby Avenue to the south. It's located in the R3B zone, which is a multifamily residential zone for medium density. As previously mentioned, the request is for a subdivision of a 5-unit residential project with at-grade parking. The project was approved by the Planning Commission on February 1st of 2018. However, the subdivision expired on February 1st, 2020, as the applicant did not get approval for the final map before the expiration date. The project itself, the actual building, is currently under construction, and this request is not for the conversion of an existing rental apartment building. This project qualifies as CEQA exempt under section 15332, which is infill development projects. Staff is able to make the required findings to recommend approval to the Planning Commission to approve the project for a tentative tract map pursuant to the draft resolution 22-1477. And that pretty much concludes my presentation, and I'm happy to take any questions if there are any. Thank you.
Thank you, Derek, very much. Do we have any questions from commissioners for Mr. Purification at this time? I'm going to take that as a resounding no. With that being said, David, do we have any public speakers on this item?
Chair, I received no request for public speakers. However, excuse me, if there is anybody on the platform calling in, *9 for me at this time, or use the raise hand feature, and we'll give you 3 minutes to speak on this item. And Chair, we are all clear.
Great, thank you. So I'm going to close the public comment portion of the public hearing, and we can move into deliberation. These are always fun. I'm not going to go first. For anyone who doesn't know that, as chair, I'm waiting to go last. So do I have a volunteer? Someone to volunteer as tribute? Okay, Commissioner Caballero, please go ahead.
Yeah, I'm going to make a motion to approve the 5-unit residential building into a common interest development for the property located at 933 North Spalding Avenue.
I will second that.
Great, thank you. So we do have a motion on the floor. I just do want to note, if anyone has any discussion around this item, it's not required certainly, but if there is any discussion around this, you're welcome. I would advise you do it at this time before we call the question. All right, and if not, David, it looks like we can go ahead and you can call the vote.
Thank you, Chair. Commissioner Carvalero,
Yes.
Commissioner Copeland,
Yes.
Commissioner Gregoire,
Yes.
Commissioner Lombardi,
Yes.
Commissioner Meadows,
Yes.
Chair Jones.
Yes.
And the motion passes, noting 6 ayes and Vice Chair Thomas as absent. We do have an appeal process. The resolution the Planning Commission just approved memorializes the Commission's final action on this matter. This action is subject to appeal to the City Council. Appeals must be submitted within 10 calendar days from this date to the City Clerk's office. Appeals must be in writing and accompanied by the required fees. The City Clerk's office can provide appeal forms and information of fees.
Thank you, David. Item 11B is our second public hearing this evening. It is 948 to 954 North San Vicente Boulevard. This is officially continued from our Thursday, August 18th meeting. This will be a public hearing to consider a request to demolish a single-family dwelling in a rear 4-unit residential building at 948 to 950 North San Vicente Boulevard and an 8-unit residential building at 954 North San Vicente Boulevard. Merge both lots and construct a 5-story, 24-unit multifamily residential building for the properties located at 948 to 954 North San Vicente Boulevard, West Hollywood. And I'm going to pass this over to staff for their presentation.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to share my screen here.
And we can see it. You're good to go.
Great. Thank you, David. Okay. Good evening, Chair Jones and members of the commission. And congratulations, Commissioner Matos and Commissioner Copeland. Welcome. My name is Antonio Castillo. I'm Senior Planner with the Current and Historic Preservation Planning Division. The item before you this evening is a request to demolish 13 dwelling units on 2 abutting parcels, merge both parcels and construct an approximately 32,967 square foot, 5-story, 24-unit residential development. This is over a single level of subterranean parking garage. With the request includes a subdivision to create all units into a condominium. And this site is located in a high-density multifamily residential zone. Staff received correspondence earlier having to do with the proposed subdivision, the tentative tract map component of this project, which is to convert units into condominiums. After discussing the request for the subdivision with the applicant team, staff is recommending that the commission continue the subdivision, which is an exhibit in your packet. That's resolution number 22-0176 to a date certain on November 3rd, 2022. While the applicant makes revisions to the map to reflect a more clear understanding of the project, but continue with the development, that being the first resolution on there. So this would be staff's recommendation for this project this evening. So the property itself, it's a approximately 13,259 square foot site located on the east side of San Vicente Boulevard, between Sunset Boulevard to the north and Cynthia Street to the south. The site is currently developed with 3 buildings, including a single family dwelling on the southern parcel, and a 4-unit 2-story apartment building at the rear. To the north on the second parcel, there's a 8-unit apartment building. Both parcels were removed from the rental market pursuant to the Alice Act back in May of 2019, and all 13 units on the property remain vacant. The existing land uses surrounding the project site are mostly multifamily residential, except for the West Hollywood Elementary School across the street, as well as the London Hotel just to the north, and then further commercial north of that. So here's one image of the property itself. The construction of the building includes 24 dwelling units within 5 stories that includes 2 very low income units and 2 low income units, a single level of semi-subterranean parking garage, and the project request utilizes density bonus for providing the 4 affordable units. The building itself includes 6 1-bedroom units, 16 2-bedroom units, and 2 3-bedroom units. Those 3-bedroom units are the upper units. 1-bedroom units will range in size from a 650 square foot to 842 square feet. 2-bedroom units will range in size from 1,267 square feet to 1,504 square feet. And the 3-bedroom units will range in size from 1,919 square feet to 2,166 square feet. The 4 affordable units are 1-bedroom units of minimum 650 square feet. And the affordable units are dispersed over 3 floors, including 2 on the ground floor and one on the second floor and one on the third floor. The ground floor provides resident services, including lobby, business center, gym, entertainment space, and a media lounge, as well as 4 of the 24 residential units. A total of 4,100 square feet of common open space will be provided on the rooftop patio. The parking garage will be accessed from a single driveway on the southernmost portion of the site along San Vicente Boulevard, and will provide 24 parking spaces. I'd like to pass this over to this portion of my presentation to City Architect Rick Abramson from the city's Urban Design and Architecture Studio. Mr. Abramson will elaborate more on the project's overall design before I complete my presentation.
Thank you. Good evening, Chair and Commissioners. Before you tonight is a what we call an urban block building that is fully fronting the site. The site does pose some particular challenges, most clearly directly related to the topography. There's a rather steep sloping frontage, but the site also does slope from front to back considerably. I think it was 14 feet. So it's rather significant, which makes siting the building itself a challenge. In the frontage, in the public way, there's some power poles, fire hydrants, meters, manhole covers, other things which also create challenges in terms of just how to access the building, and it does limit some of the options. I think the applicant team has done a really nice job on the frontage in terms of material composition, blending 3 primarily materials in a way to break down the scale and give it a little bit more of a residential vibe, especially with some of the projections and elements. They're also proposing to integrate an art feature near the entryway in conjunction with their landscape front area. All that will, again, help to break down the scale, enhance the pedestrian experience. Both the west-facing front facade and the south-facing facade are developed nicely in terms of articulation and materiality in particular. The parking itself did have a considerable amount of tandem configuration at the design review subcommittee. The applicant team was provided some feedback, and they've gone back and revised the parking layout. And so there's only 4 units that will now be parked in tandem, which I think is a significant improvement from what was reviewed at design review subcommittee. One of the curb cuts I also want to point out is going to be filled in. There's currently 2 in front of the 2 parcels. So filling that in will significantly help the frontage and what little street parking is available. At least it will enhance that. So I think those would be the primary comments, and I'll turn it back over to Mr. Castillo.
Thank you, Rick. So continuing on, by providing the 4 affordable units, the project qualifies for a maximum of 50% density bonus. And the project is also eligible for incentives, concessions, and waivers under the municipal code and state law. As such, the applicant is requesting a density bonus, 3 concessions, and 4 waivers to achieve the project as proposed. Concession number 1, that would be to allow relief from the limits of the aggregated maximum average unit size that is restricted to 1,200 square feet in an R4 zone. The request is to increase it by 13% to an average unit size of 1,352 square feet. Concession number 2 would be to allow a 10% reduction in the minimum rear yard setback from the standard 15 feet to 13 feet 6 inches. Concession 3 has to do with the parking garage, and to allow the subterranean parking garage to project above the grade in the rear yard area. The project site has a gross slope of nearly 7%, which is a difference of nearly 7 feet from the northwest to the southwest of the site. Given that the site cross slope makes it infeasible for the garage to remain fully subterranean in the rear yard area, and at the downhill side of the site, the subterranean would extend into only a portion of the rear yard at the rear area. So this is I want to just give you a graphic. I know this could get into the weeds, but this is an elevation of the east facade, or the rear area, and because the property slopes quite steeply, there's going to be a portion of the parking garage that exceeds the or projects above the grade, which is what the waiver is requesting. I'm sorry, the concession is requesting. Going on to the waivers, waiver number 1 is an increase in story and building height from the required or the maximum 4 stories and 45 feet in an R4B zone to 5 stories with an additional height of 14 feet 3 inches. That takes the building to 59 feet 3 inches in height, or 63 feet and 3 inches at the pool deck area. Waiver number 2 is to waive the requirement for a 6-foot additional front yard setback at the front yard. It's for the front yard setback from the 2nd floor and upper stories. Waiver number 3 is to waive the requirement to provide common open space on the ground floor. The code requires for a project of this size to provide 1,000 square feet of common open space with a percentage to be on the ground floor, and the rest can be allocated on the rooftop. In this case, the applicant is requesting to put all 100% and some, instead of the 1,000 minimum, they're providing 4,100 square feet of common open space. Waiver number 4, the last waiver here is a waiver of the 6-foot height maximum for the wall and fence. And that has to do, it's in connection with concession number 3, which is the southeastern corner of the property where it slopes the most and where the parking garage daylights. That area needs to have a wall and a fence that would exceed the height. In conclusion, staff supports the project given that it is well suited for the site and the zoning district. It's thoughtfully designed and complementary to the context of the neighborhood. It meets the applicable development standards for a housing project using a density bonus, and provides a net increase of 11 units to the city's housing stock. Under state law, projects that meet objective design standards under the Housing Accountability Act must be approved unless there is a documented health and safety impact. A project with a density bonus and concession is still considered consistent with objective standards. And therefore, consistent with state law limits on discretion for qualifying affordable housing development projects, staff recommends that the Planning Commission approve the project request subject to the findings and conditions of approval set forth in your draft resolution. But before I conclude, there are 3 conditions that that staff is recommending be modified. These are modifications from those that are included in your draft resolution number PC 22-1475. That has to do with condition 3.1. There was a typo where it reflected 8 units, and that's been changed to reflect the correct 9. And that's also for the 7 for 6. Condition number 3 replaces and clarifies the applicant's request from their application, and that's that reads: the inclusionary units shall be reasonably dispersed throughout the project and shall be 1-bedroom units with a minimum interior area of, interior area of 650 square feet with finishes and appliances of builder's quality or better. And condition 9.8 in the landscaping section includes this, adds an additional provision here to clarify the project scope and its conditions, and that would read: there shall be no fences, walls, or hedges within the first 18 inches of the front property line. And what's being added is exclusive of any guardrails required by building code due to the sloping site. So there is a guardrail located in that portion of the property because there is a significant drop or a substantial drop that requires the slope. And with that, there is also a third condition that I don't have up on the slide, but it has to do with condition 3.2. And that is prior to issuance of a demolition permit or building permit, the applicant shall execute with the city and have recorded against title of the property an agreement governing the affordable units in the project and imposing restrictions on the property. There's a additional sentence that will be added that is in relationship to the continued subdivision for this evening. And that additional sentence would read: further conditions and restrictions on required affordable inclusionary units would be added to any future resolution approving a subdivision on the subject property. And with that, this concludes staff's presentation. Staff is available for any questions, and the applicant team is also prepared to have a presentation. Thank you, Chair.
Great. Thank you so much, Tony. So this is an opportunity for any commissioners to ask questions of staff. This is limited to items contained in the staff report. Questioning this is not a time for discussion about opinions. It's really about asking questions for the purposes of clarification of staff at this time. So with that being said, do we have any questions for staff about this item at this time? Commissioner Copeland, please go ahead.
Hi, yeah, thank you, Chair. I have a question about how was the determination made that all 4 of these affordable units were going to be just 1 bedroom rather than an average or mix of all of the unit size?
The requirement for 1 bedroom is, give me one moment here. There's a provision in the code. Jennifer, do you by any chance have that provision?
I can jump in, no problem. So projects with a base density between 11 units and 20 units are given the opportunity to choose whether to have the affordable units be comparable or builder's quality and 650 square feet, 1 bedroom. So in that category between 11 and 20 units, the applicant does get to decide. And that is in 1922-030 A2.
Okay, with 4 units using 8 tandem spaces in the parking, that leaves just 16 for the other 20 units. Who would decide or determine which of the 4 units would not get a parking space? And would the inclusionary affordable units be exempt from that loss of parking?
So the developer or the applicant will be able to elaborate on how they assign parking spaces. With regards to the affordable units, there is condition 3.12 to be exact of resolution 22-1475 that requires affordable units shall be provided with the same number of parking spaces provided for a market rate unit of the same type on 1-bedroom count. So 1-bedroom units or units are required to provide half a parking space, and a 1-bedroom market rate would be 1 parking space. Therefore, out of the 4 affordable units, 2 would provide 1 parking space and 2 will not have a parking space.
Okay. The question that I have now is a big question, I suppose. Several years ago, the state left it up to the discretion of rent-regulated cities, whether the 1-for-1 replacements could be all affordable or rent stabilized. And I believe this commission several years ago determined that they should be made all affordable. Does this commission have the authority or discretion to, with regard to the 1-to-1 replacement, to make the requirement that these be all affordable rather than the mix of rent stabilized and affordable?
Commissioner Copeland, I think I can jump in there and
Okay,
welcome.
please, thank you.
From the city attorney's office. So I think the short answer is under state law, it has to be, it either has to be RSO or it has to be, in terms of the replacement obligation, affordable. I think the only thing to keep in mind is if the commission required 11 or 13 units to all be affordable, we'd be dealing with a different project that would have to come back because they'd be entitled to a significantly higher set of density bonus incentives and concessions. And so doing so, I don't think it's prohibited, but we would be looking at sort of a different project in terms of what they're eligible for under state law.
Okay, but since this commission made a determination before that going forward, that's how that should be done, but the zone text amendment was not sent to council yet, do we have the ability to say we want these to be affordable as was determined previously?
Understood. No, I mean, until the zone text amendment is adopted, it's not sort of effective and for this project. And additionally, because this is a Housing Accountability Act project under SB 330, at the date it was deemed complete, it's subject only to those adopted objective standards that are in the code. So if the ZTA is not yet effective for the city, it wouldn't be enforceable against this project.
Okay, I have another question for you. We're talking about the rooftop. Since this is a residential property, not a commercial property, would the accessibility hours for the rooftop be determined by code compliance, or is it up to the management's discretion as far as maximum capacity and also the hours of accessibility?
Yeah, the hours of operation would be controlled by the owner, the developer himself. The city does have noise ordinance that restricts noise on properties during certain hours, but having further restrictions and including those in any future CCNRs for and lease agreements would be something that that would be appropriate here.
Okay, I guess the other question is, this application is for 24 units. So at a future date, it wouldn't be possible to exceed the 24 units by converting any of the downstairs media or entertainment space or any of the rooftop area into an additional unit. This would just remain at 24 units.
The project request is for 24 units.
Right, but that couldn't be changed at a future date by converting one of these common spaces into a unit or a manager's unit or a rental unit.
Under code, that would be a revision to this project, or an amendment to this project. If there is if that request falls under the West Hollywood Municipal Code provisions or state law, I suppose that could be an option, but that's not what's being considered this evening.
Okay, all right. That's all I have right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Copeland. Any additional questions for staff at this time? Commissioner Lombardi, please go ahead.
Thank you. Commissioner Copeland actually asked a lot of my questions and was starting to touch on a follow-up question that I have based on what we're hearing right now. I have a question with regards to the quality of the units. I understand that we have in our code an allocation between 11 units and 20 units to choose the affordable units to be comparable or builder's quality. So I understand that aspect of this. In terms of the unit count, are we counting this as a 20 unit building because there are 4 inclusionary units and those would be the additional? Because we have 24 units listed, right?
Right. I'm not following your. I'm sorry, Commissioner.
It's on the base density. So the base density, Tony, you'll have to jump in on what the exact base density, but it's less than 20 or 20 or fewer.
16. Okay.
16. Thank you.
So
the provision is under units required. So it says for any base density of 11 to 20 units, 20% of those units must be inclusionary and they must be provided as so forth. So, so that 11 to 20 category is for the base density only.
Okay, and the base density is 16. I guess what I was wondering was actually a little more specific to some of these spaces on the ground level that feel like they're units and could be converted to units, and what that may mean on the base density if it were changed at a later date.
If they came back with an amendment to change that, we would have to go back and make sure that it meets all of the code provisions that apply.
Okay. I guess we have 16 as base, so it may only increase to 18 and not above that 20.
It couldn't increase the base density because the base density is the maximum allowed by code.
Okay. And could you help us understand the process if a building like this were to convert some of the spaces into more residential units, how that would work? I guess I'm a little bit confused because it's a condo project. So
I think maybe after the applicant has a chance to make their presentation, it might shed some light on the intent for those spaces, and then we can talk about that afterwards. Yeah.
Sure. I just want to get that out now so that we're thinking about it, because that's really the big question that I have on my mind right now, and I'm trying to understand what this means. Those are my questions. Some of the other questions I had were already addressed. Thank you.
Thank you. Any additional questions for staff at this time? Commissioner Matos, please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Jones. I had a question for staff as it relates to the state required 1-for-1 housing structure around affordable units and rent stabilized units. I'm talking about AB 2556. My understanding is that with state law, it requires that we were replacing affordable units, affordable designated units, in addition to replacing rent stabilized units on a 1-for-1 basis. I'm looking forward to the applicant's presentation because I want to try to understand what their plan is for the building. But my question is, with that state law, would it only apply to if the units were being rented out versus sold? So would we be meeting the state requirement for a 1-for-1 transition on affordable units and rent stabilized units if the units had been planned to be sold?
So I can start. So it does get tricky, and that's why we're pulling back on the map at this point, because I think we discussed that it would be a lot better to make sure that it's clear on the map. So when the map comes back, then it will clearly state which of the units will be retained as a block and rented at the rent stabilized rates.
Okay, but my understanding as right now is that state law would maintain these units as rental units in our housing stock, affordable rental units and rent stabilized rental units. Is that staff's understanding of that law as well, AB 2556?
Yes, I'm looking at the state code sections, so I'm not the Senate and Assembly bill numbers don't stick with me, but in 65915 as it is right now, yes, that is what it says, and that is what the intent is for everyone here, and that's why with the map we want it to be very clear, and so we're gonna take it back, have them clarify that, and bring it back. But the project, the building itself, as proposed, meets that requirement.
Okay, wonderful. And then I have a procedural question. As you know, I'm rather new. With continuing the subdivision portion of this project and still proceeding with hearing demolition permit and development permit, is that pretty typical? Is that a typical mode of proceeding?
The development itself is it's common to process them separately. In this case, the applicant submitted them concurrently. So a development, depending on the number of units, based on the municipal code, would be either administratively approved at staff level or requires planning commission approval. What always requires planning commission approval is a subdivision. In this case, they're coming together, and at this time we're requesting that one component be continued, so it can move forward on its own.
An example is the item that came before this one was a subdivision map all by itself.
But that was because of the expiration, right?
It was, but it doesn't always. We see this a lot where there's a staff level approval process, and then, like Tony just said, the only thing that goes to planning commission is the map.
Thank you.
Do I have additional questions for staff at this time? All right, I want to make sure I do this in a procedurally correct way. I'd like to ask for disclosures, but before I do that, Mr. Rosen, can you advise if we should have one of the members of our design review subcommittee give their synopsis of what transpired at the design review meeting at this time, or?
Chair, I think either is okay. I mean, you may want to do disclosures first, just in the interest of getting that out the way, and then have the subcommittee report. But I don't think there's any sort of prohibition on handling it in the opposite way, if you'd like. But it may be best to do both in advance of public comment. I think that'd be
sure.
Yeah,
absolutely. Okay, so let's do this so that we're getting all the information at once, and then we can do disclosures. Then we will move into the applicant's presentation, then public comment, then rebuttal. Then we will have an opportunity to ask questions of the applicant, and then we can move into deliberation, just to kind of give you an outline of what that's going to look like. So I believe Commissioner Lombardi will be giving a quick overview of the design review subcommittee's feedback of this project at the DRS meeting.
Sure. Thank you, Chair. So during the design review subcommittee meeting, overall we were pleased with the project design, and we did have some questions that got into some more specific aspects of the design itself. One of the first things that we talked about was the parking. We thought that the parking was a little bit challenging with all the tandem spaces. We did ask to look at an alternate scheme, which we're seeing now. We also did look at the east side of the garage as well and question why so much footprint was being taken, because it extended into, I believe, into native soil and beyond the footprint of the first floor above. There's been some changes there as well in the design. Now you'll see that wall kind of jogs out just in that one area. We also looked at some of the open spaces on the ground floor off of the units, and we requested to consider pushing in some of the building facade at that level to allow for more outdoor space since they were sort of narrow. So you will see that in portions of the project as well. We also, on the ground floor, looked at the configuration of the common spaces. That was a pretty extensive topic. And you'll see that there are 2 common spaces that are configured so that they have each their own bathrooms. We had talked about if those could be consolidated and if that could better maybe be optimized in terms of how that space is used, and if there would be ways to get more light into some of those spaces as well, so they'd be desirable, usable spaces. We also looked at the drive entrance. It's a challenging site and condition. The drive does flare out at the street. However, there's about a 16-foot wide parking drive aisle, which is larger than single car, but not double car width, to my understanding. And so we thought that was challenging because it could kind of lead to a little bit of a dance happening with cars there, being that it's larger, but not large enough for 2 full lanes. We also discussed corridor treatment in the in the hallways, and if there are ways to make that feel nice and not too stark in aesthetic. And then on the 5th floor penthouse, we did look at the finishes and suggested that alternates to plaster be considered, which have been. And then there were also questions on the rooftop about the arrangement of the outdoor space, how to work with planters and create shade. We thought that the pool area was lacking in shade. And then there were also some questions about what's driving the overall placement of trees and landscaping up there. And then we also touched on consolidating mechanical units and placement at the rooftop to avoid placing HVAC and mechanical units close to the parapet edges. And then we also discussed the arrangement of the PV arrays on site, optimizing the placement for overall rooftop use and programming. And then one of the last items we touched on was any clarity on the strategy on how the art component would exist ahead of the planning commission meeting, how they would integrate artwork into the project and what the vision is there.
Great. Thank you, Commissioner Lombardi, very much. Appreciate that. I know sometimes these things happen so far back that it's hard to synopsize. So thank you very much for that very concise summary of the feedback from that meeting. At this time, I'd like to request announcement of any disclosures. Do we have disclosures at this time? Commissioner Copeland.
Yes, I did meet with the applicant virtually, and we discussed items that were in the staff report. I also visited the site. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other disclosures at this time? I will disclose that I did meet with the applicant and the applicant's representative. It was a virtual call, and we discussed items contained in the staff report. I also visited the site. So that's it. Do we have any other disclosures at this time? Looks like not. Okay. With that, we are going to move this over to the applicant's presentation. The applicant will have 10 minutes. I'm not sure who's Mr. Levin. Will be presenting.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, Chair, Commissioners. Edward Levin, resident of West Hollywood. First, I want to congratulate Commissioners Copeland and Matos on their appointments. Look forward to their comments on the project and future issues before the Commission. But I'll get right into the presentation. We don't have a whole lot of time. With me is my partner at Levin Reno Architects, Jorge Norino. Also with me is Craig Berberian, the owner, who's built a number of rental projects in the city, and Paul Lewis, our landscape architect. This will be a rental project. There'll be a tract map on it just to preserve entitlements, but this is, in fact, a rental developer. We'll be coming back to you with tract map conditions that satisfy all the city's requirements we have be happy to do that at a future date. Here's the project site on San Vicente, as Tony said. It's 2 lots right across from West Hollywood Elementary. You can see we have a dense urban fabric, consistent street wall, multifamily buildings built out to the setbacks. As you know, of course, San Vicente is a very wide arterial street. We have a 74-foot right-of-way. The site slopes steeply up from south to north. With density bonus, we start with 5 stories. We're entitled to a 5th story under a state density bonus waiver, not a concession. You've had some comments that suggest that state law limits us to 10 feet. It does not. State law says nothing about 10 feet. It mentions no dimensions whatsoever for a concession or a waiver. Anyone who tells you otherwise does not know the law that they're presuming to quote. We're dividing the facade in half, which reflects the grain of the urban fabric, this being a double lot. It also reflects the city's height measurement standards. We establish the entry at the center of the facade, and we align that floor level with the sidewalk at that point, so there's a direct connection from the sidewalk into the building. Then we carve away the building mass. We step back to the 5th floor, we cut vertical slots to break up the massing at the south. We articulate the street facade with pairs of bay windows, and we create projecting balconies at the corners. Those vertical slots allow for natural shading of the windows and terraces, as well as natural ventilation by thermal convection. These balconies and insets also help with the natural cross ventilation. All the corridors are naturally ventilated, which take advantage of downslope breezes without creating a wind tunnel effect. The 5th floor step backs and individual projecting balconies and cuts in the south facade create usable open space. Here's our existing site. The existing site has virtually no permeability. There are no trees and no shading. There's a single palm tree in the middle of the site. There is 1 tree at the extreme northwest, that's the upper left, that's broken through the retaining wall. There is at the south, there's a little L-shaped planter strip with some shrubs and 3 tiny little planter boxes at the rear building. At the north, there's a planter box that you can see at the far left that's actually over the property line into the public right-of-way. That's it. Otherwise, this entire site's paved. We're cutting down no shade trees. There are currently no street trees, and there's currently no parkway. Here's our site permeability in green. We pull our garage back from the property line, so we have permeability on all sides. We can provide new canopy trees and natural soil. See here, green in the front yard and both rear corners. We'll create a new parkway with new street trees. In other words, we'll greatly increase the tree canopy and streetscape. We're providing canopy trees where there are currently none. And we're dramatically increasing the greenscape of the city. We're also dramatically improving the urban streetscape with a parkway and street trees where currently none exist anywhere on this block. As Commissioner Lombardi mentioned, our original garage stayed out of the side yards, but it went all the way back to the rear property, and it had 8 cars in tandem. DRS asked us to improve it, and we did. Here's our new layout, only 4 cars in tandem, and as you can see in the upper right-hand corner, we have substantially more permeable soil, natural soils in the yard that's not without a subterranean garage below it. You can clearly see how much unexcavated area we have for permeability. We do need a very small modification to make this layout work. You'll see at the lower left, there are 2 stalls that have an asterisk. Those are standard stalls. Standard stalls are required to be 18 feet in length. We need a modification to reduce that 18 feet by 1 7/8 inch. We're less than 2 inches off from that standard to be able to make this layout work. We note that we don't have a 26-foot drive aisle at that point. We have a 30-foot drive aisle. So we think this is actually no impact whatsoever, but we do need that consideration. Here's our first floor plan, 4 units plus amenity spaces in gray at the lower left. DRS asked us to improve the outdoor areas for the northeast unit. That's the upper right. So we did that. We pulled back to give them a better terrace. Our lid biofiltration planters at the rear of the property. It'll flow filtered water out to the street by gravity. We're not using pumps for that purpose. We're trying to reduce energy use and increase sustainability wherever we can. That's part of the reason we need the taller wall down there to be able to flow by gravity out to the street. Typical floor plan, you can see the deep slots cut at the south that provide significant cross ventilation. As staff noted, we're providing 4 affordable units as 1 bedrooms at $650. Housing is confirmed, this is correct, and as Tony noted, condition 3.3 is being modified per 1920-030A2. That, by the way, has been in our zoning ordinance since 2007. It's in there for a very good reason that I don't have time to go into, but I would be happy to discuss with you at any length you'd like. We have 2 affordable units on the first floor, 1 on the second and 1 on the third, so they're dispersed as required. The project fully complies with the zoning ordinance and our housing ordinance. Here's the 5th floor. You can see the very large setbacks for terraces and shade trellises. You can see the building to the north of us has a large, flat, unbroken mass. That building comes up above our 4th floor line. You see only about 1.5 floors, a little bit less than that actually, of our building from the north side. Here's our roof plan, raised area for the pool. It's on the street side, but well set back, both from our neighbors to the south and from the street. Will be subject to the city's standard hours for noise. But this pool location absolutely minimizes the impact on the community. Frankly, the traffic noise on San Vicente creates more noise than this pool possibly could. Our more passive spaces are at the southeast, that's lower right. We moved our photovoltaic shade structure from the southeast corner. That's actually now a fabric structure. There's a fabric structure at the area to provide shade for part of the area, the green area north of the pool. We have pulled back our mechanical equipment all to the north and consolidated it so that it's very far in from the east and west. We are more than a story above our neighbor, and none of the equipment extends above the parapet. With the low noise equipment that we're using now, there'll be no noise impacts on our neighbor from the mechanical equipment. The photovoltaic structures shade the condensers for better cooling efficiency. Here's the street view for the southwest. For clarity, we're not showing the new street trees in this view. To reduce visual mass, reflect the urban fabric, we break up the facade with different materials. Wood to the north, metal to the south. We carry the detailing over to maintain a sense of integration. You can see how the effect of setting the 5th floor back makes this read as 4 stories plus a penthouse. By the entry there, you'll see what looks like a brown planter with a figure next to it. That is the area that we're looking at for our art project. We want the art project not simply to be a piece of sculpture, but we want to actually treat that planter and its bench as a sculptural object, and an object that can be used not only by the residents of this building as they're waiting for Uber or waiting for a friend to pick them up, but also can be used by anybody in the public trying to hike up the street, because we're about halfway between Cynthia and San Vicente, and it is a hike. We'd like to be able to help facilitate that and to have really sort of functional art that allows us to do that. Here are the building materials: gray stone base, wood at the north, metal at the south. This view gives you an idea of how the projecting bay windows and the materials clearly mark the building entry. We originally had stucco at the 5th floor and a solid parapet at the roof deck. DRS asked us to take a look at this. We're now back. That top part of the facade front of the building now is 2 by 3 foot porcelain tile panels, which is a far more finished material. And we went to a glass rail up at the pool area, which reduces the visual effect of the parapet height. Here's a 3D view from the southeast. As the city architect mentioned, you can see that we're using materials to break up the south facade. If I can just continue for a moment. There again, there's our ground floor landscape plan. Here's a view of us at night. Be happy to answer any questions you may have at this point.
Thank you, Mr. Levin. Again, a quick procedural question for City Attorney. Would this be the appropriate time to ask questions of the applicant, or should we hold those until after public comment and the applicant's rebuttal?
I think you can ask questions now if that's of interest.
Okay. Do we have any questions for the applicant at this time? Commissioner Matos, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Levin, for your presentation. You mentioned at the beginning of the presentation that you would plan to rent the units. We had not seen that indicated in the staff report. So I was planning to ask you what your plan was for units in this project. Are you planning to rent only the 1-for-1 units that would be required to maintain the rent stabilized and affordable units, or would you plan to rent all of the units in the 24-unit development?
Thank you for the question, Commissioner. We're planning on renting all the units. This is really a rental developer. This is our 8th project with them. They've all been rental projects. Some have had track maps, some haven't. We typically recommend that they do, simply to preserve their entitlement. But this is a group that builds and holds. They just sold one of their buildings in West Hollywood after having it for, I believe, about 40 years. It was simply a property transaction. But these are not condominium developers. Their plan is to rent all 24 units.
Thank you for the clarification.
We have additional questions for the applicant at this time. Commissioner Copeland, please go ahead.
Hello, thank you, Chair. The ground floor that will have the entertainment and media lounges, so with the big screen TVs and so forth. So there won't be any speakers for music or big screen TVs or movie screens on the rooftop. Is that correct?
There will be one screen on the rooftop. I can go back to the roof plan and show you where that will be. Here in the plan, you'll see that there is a stair at the right-hand side at the far east. The wall of that stair will have the screen on it, but we will strictly control the maximum volume that it will be allowed. So it will really be only for the people sitting there. The sound will not be permitted. It'll be regulated so that you really won't be able to hear it much beyond that.
Okay, thank you.
It will not be suitable for somebody even sitting over by the tree in the middle to be able to hear.
Okay, there are no disabled accessible parking spots at this time planned for either inside of the subterranean parking garage or on San Vicente near the project. Is that correct?
Oh, no, absolutely not correct. We're absolutely required to provide an accessible parking space. So there should be one. Yes, that's required. And when there's only one required, it's a van accessible space.
Okay.
It's also EV ready.
Okay, you mentioned putting a parkway. I think that sidewalk there is probably what, 4 feet or something. Is pretty narrow. Where would that parkway go in relation to that? How does that work? If you could explain a little bit for me.
Yes, I'd be happy to. Here you can see in the ground floor plan. Right now we have approximately 7 feet from the curb to our front property line.
Okay.
All of the entire street, this entire side of San Vicente was enlarged by about 12 feet sometime when the county controlled this area. So that basically screwed up the entire parkway and front yards of every one of these buildings on this side of the street. Right now, we have only 7 feet to the property line. The city requires a 10-foot combined parkway and sidewalk. So we are granting the city a 3.05-foot easement onto the property to be able to have a 10-foot combined. And that will consist, as you can see here, starting from the left-hand side, which is San Vicente, there will be a 6-inch curb, a 4-foot, 6-foot wide planting strip, and a 5-foot sidewalk. And that planting strip will be fully irrigated by us. Right now, we are showing 2 street trees there. We believe that's what Public Works will require, but that all of the parkway design and the number and species of trees will be subject to Public Works. So we will comply with their requirements. Our landscape architect and our civil architect and we will be coordinating this with Public Works.
Okay. Could you tell me why there's an additional height request for the pool deck?
Yeah, basically you've got a 4-foot pool and it's extremely difficult to, I mean, obviously there's no head height down below that in the units to be able to allow a sunken pool well. But we also note that sunken pool wells are terrible for acoustics into the units below. They tend to collect water and leak. We try to avoid them wherever possible. Again, we've taken that additional height and we put it where it can least impact anything. It's on our street side on a major arterial street. And
Okay.
set well back from the street and from the south.
Okay. Can you tell me about any other cooling or shading methods that have been implemented for the upper floors where maybe the trees won't reach to provide any shading?
Absolutely.
Could you remind us again, please? Thank you.
Yes, of course. And you can see it pretty well here. You can see that the balconies, our inset corner balconies, which we're using for cross ventilation in the units, because they're mostly corner units. They have deep inset balconies that provide shade. We have shade eyebrows that extend over that. You'll see at the 5th floor, we have a trellis structure on the west side here and 3 different trellis structures on the south to shade those those units as well.
Okay, those balconies protrude how far into the setback on the San Vicente side? I see they're inset, but how much of that balcony is protruding out from the building?
I believe we're only projecting, we're allowed to project 4 feet. We're not projecting that far. I believe we're projecting 2.5 feet.
Okay. All right. And there's been a question asked earlier about the affordable and rent stabilized units, that those will have the same quality finishes as the other. Is that planned at this time to be different or the same?
You know, those units are allowed to have builder's quality appliances and finishes.
Right.
Quite frankly, the owner is telling us that they're just not going to bother with that. It's just much easier to provide the same finishes and the same appliances as all the rest of the units. So
Okay.
that's our understanding at this time.
Okay. All right. Thank you. That's all I have. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Any additional questions for the applicant at this time? Commissioner Gregoire, please go ahead.
Hi there. I understand that you're providing significantly more than the minimum required parking spaces. However, it does seem like there might not be adequate parking to serve the needs of the residents and to protect the residential neighborhood from too much parking on the street. Could you just comment about your thinking with respect to the parking and its adequacy, both for the residents and to protect the residential neighborhoods?
Sure, be happy to. First of all, in terms of the street parking, as staff noted, because we're removing the second curb cut here, we actually have 3 spaces instead of 2 in front of the building, so we're increasing that. We have twice as much parking as the code requires. Now, it's a bit of a climb. I like to get the exercise, but both north and south, we're within half mile of major transit here. And the owners of the project are very much committed to alternate transportation and to not providing so much parking that we're encouraging people to have multiple cars anymore. And so they believe that this is adequate for their rental market. And as I said, it's literally twice as much parking as is required.
Thank you.
Commissioner Matos, please go ahead.
Hi, Mr. Levin. Sorry, I just had a follow-up question to Commissioner Gregoire's question regarding the parking. How do you plan to divide the parking spaces up with the units? I understand you have 2 3-bedroom units, 16 2-bedroom units. and 4, six one-bedroom units. How do you plan to divide those up?
Okay, well, first of all, there are four tandem pairs, and each one of those tandem pairs will be assigned to a single unit only. They're not shared between the units. Beyond that, we really can't say. That will largely depend on what the rental market's looking like 2.5 years from now. They're going to be decoupled. They'll be dealt with separately from the unit rentals themselves, which the city encourages to help control parking. It's part of the transportation management program. So I really can't say. I doubt the developer could even say at this point who's going to get how many of what.
Got it. And my follow-up question to that is, in the resolution that we're considering tonight, specifically resolution 1475, section 3.12 states that the project applicant, in this case that's you, is required to have, for the affordable units, the same amount of parking that would be available to the market rate units. With 4 affordable units being at the site for now, we'll see how further meetings go. That leaves 4 affordable units times the 0.5 would be 2 parking spaces. Are you committed to maintaining that for the affordable units to ensure that they're given the same amount of access as the market rate units?
This is a standard condition that's been in for a number of years. It predates the 0.5 per unit standard by the state. It is really unclear. I think it's unclear to us and it's unclear to staff exactly how that has to apply to the project. What I can tell you is that we'll work with the housing department to make sure that we're in full compliance with the law as the city interprets it. But I don't think we're still, the city, I believe, and staff can jump in, but the city is still not exactly 100% sure on how to apply this to this circumstance. What does it mean to have to assign a half space to unit? Do you do how you do that? In general, yes, it would mean it would suggest that the 4 affordables get 2 spaces between them. But as I said, other than the fact that we'll work on this with staff, with housing staff and planning staff, and figure out what works for the city, it's really pretty hard to say. We comply with the housing requirements and the planning requirements. As I said, I don't think anybody knows the answer to this question.
Well, I mean, it is a condition in the resolution before you, sir.
It is, absolutely. But as I said, the condition was imposed before the state saw fit to reduce the required parking to 1/2 space per unit. So we'll comply. If that means, if the city determines that means that 2 of the affordable spaces, affordable units get a space, that's what we'll do. If the city determines something else, we'll discuss that with them.
Chair, if I may help clarify that condition. Planning in speaking with our housing staff confirmed that it is similar to, so the market rate units would be similar to the affordable units in this case. So if as parking applies to this project, half a parking space is required per unit, that would also apply here. So that would be that 2 parking space or 2 units, 2 affordable units would provide a single parking space, just as single bedroom market rate units apply.
That's our understanding.
Thank you, staff and Mr. Levin.
Any additional questions for the applicant at this time? Commissioner Lombardi, please go ahead.
I have one question. You're asking for a concession to increase the unit sizes by 13%. And I'm just trying to understand how this all relates back to the code and the number of inclusionary units that you're providing, which are all on the smaller size. So these are supposed to be comparable, but they're all 1 bedroom and they're all small, and you're also asking to enlarge the size of the other units.
As staff noted, 1922-03-082 permits units of this base density to provide the affordable units as 650 square foot 1 bedrooms, not to provide them as comparable units. In any case, the city, just so you know, and staff can correct me if I'm misstating something, the city interprets comparable units as meaning comparable number of bedrooms, not strictly comparable size. But as I say, in this case, because our base density is 16, it falls between the 11 and 20 unit base density provision that allows for 650 square foot 1 bedrooms. And that would be true regardless of the composition and mix of the market rate units.
Okay, it seems like it's falling into a little bit of a gray area. The other question that I have relates to something that I understand that you're still working out here, but I do want to ask it. So with regards to the tract map and how you'd be dividing the property out, are you looking at using those additional spaces on the first floor as something that could be future residential units?
Those are not units. They do not fall into the calculation of the density on the site.
Okay.
Oh, now, how exactly we're going to handle the replacement, we don't know. To be honest, we got a call at 5:30 today from staff asking, saying that they still had some concerns about this and asked us if we would allow that to be continued so that we could all resolve this. We said, sure, of course we would. We always try to work with staff to make sure that this is being done correctly and legally. But to be honest, we had about a 10-minute conversation about this. And so I don't know how we're going to approach that, but I do know that it will not involve any of those spaces on the ground floor.
Okay. And then I have a design related question. In your presentation, you had mentioned the idea of the art component, that there may be something that's sort of integrated into the seating. It could be a good place for people to stop, wait for Uber, Lyft, rideshare, car pickup, that sort of thing. However, and correct me if I missed something in the plans here, there's no rideshare drop-off area, and it is a tricky street in terms of driving and vehicular traffic. So I'm just wondering if there's a plan there to maybe integrate those ideas, be more of an overall benefit or something to think about. But I'd like to hear if you could elaborate on any of that.
Sure, be happy to. This is too small a frontage for us to be able to consider a carriage lane or a drop-off. Quite frankly, a parking space is worth a hell of a lot more than an Uber or Lyft drop-off for a building like this. Now, we'll note the following. As you're looking at this main rendering here, you'll see a car at the left-hand side. In front of that car is, you'll see a red curb that has a fire hydrant. No one's able to park there, so that can easily serve as a pickup and drop-off space. It's more than long enough for someone to stop and have an Uber at that point. You'll also note that that there's quite a bit of curb south of us, or a lack of curb south of us. The project, the existing building to the south of us, as you can see, has tuck under parking. So there's no parking at all at that point. So someone can easily stop briefly at that point or between that point and our driveway. So we don't think that drop-off and pickup is going to be a real problem on this site. But we don't want to put a dedicated drop-off space in the middle, because right now there are 2 parking spaces. We managed to squeeze a third out of this for the street. We don't really want to give that up. as I said, up north there by that power pole and the fire hydrant is actually a perfect space for pickup and drop off.
Okay, thank you.
Any additional questions for the applicant at this time? Let me make sure I'm scrolling between my Brady Bunch heads here right now. Okay. Okay, looks like there being none. My questions have been sufficiently answered. At least at this time, we will move into public comment, and then the applicant will have an opportunity to rebut. David, do we have any public speakers on this item?
Yes, Chair, we do. I received a couple comment forms. Our first public speaker will be Lynn Russell, and she will be followed by Lynn Hoopengarner. If there is anybody on the platform that would like to speak, just *9 for me if you're calling in, or use the raise hand feature, and we'll give you 3 minutes.
Great,
Lynn,
thank you.
hi.
Just as a matter of course, please remember to state your name and city of residence before you begin speaking. Thank you.
Go ahead, Lynn.
Hi, good evening. This is Lynn Russell, West Hollywood. Good evening, Chair Jones and fellow commissioners, and welcome to the new additions to the commission. Being fully cognizant of California Code 65915 and 655895, about which Mr. Levin speaks, I wish to offer the following observations. 1, in addition to any design offenses regularly committed by this design team, it becomes troubling that the team feels so inadequate about their project as to—
Oh, thank you. What are you still doing here?
I know.
Is that
David, you might need to,
855?
David, you need to mute. David, you need to mute.
Sorry, Chair. Lynn, go ahead. I'll add some time to you there.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll start with number 1 again. In addition to any design offenses regularly committed by this design team, which people feel, it becomes troubling that the team feels so inadequate about their project as to draw upon testimonials from their residents. 2, good design always speaks for itself, and the necessity to provide public art is negated when the building should be in and of itself the art form. 3, the skin, so to speak, of any structure can easily adapt to local conditions and preferences, while the underneath structural aspects can be interchangeable. There is no additional expense in providing harmony, aesthetic quality, and aesthetic quality rather than an elevated value-engineered project. 4, secondly troubling is that this design team has religiously collaborated with the planner of record, yet continues to present obscured information not easily recognized by the public and commissioners, particularly the absence of the narrative that was not attached to the staff report and added today. 5th, the public is grateful to former Commissioner Lynn Hoopengarner for speaking accurately and eloquently, which I'm sure she will this evening, with considerable knowledge and understanding for the benefit of the public and anyone on the commission willing to learn and seriously improve their acumen. Lastly, it continues to be mildly offensive that the architect of this project continues to occupy a seat on the Historic Preservation Commission while expressing no affinity for the subject and spirit of the subject matter, historic preservation. His public presence is rarely a credit to the commission, and more specifically, he has taken very public opportunities to degrade considerable members of the architectural profession. Thank you so much for your attention this evening.
Thank you, Lynn. Our next speaker will be Lynn Hoopengarner. Lynn, go ahead and unmute *6, and you will have 3 minutes.
Thank you, David. Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. It's good to see you, and welcome to our 2 nearest commissioners. I wish you great success. I think you've all read my comments. What I would like to say at this time is that I continue to be greatly concerned about the 1-for-1 replacement and the fact that that wasn't addressed correctly in the staff report and in the resolutions and in the tract map. And that to continue only the tract map would be to do a grave disservice to this decision process, because once this project is potentially approved, that track map becomes a quasi-judicial rubber stamp, and you have no ability to go back and address the issues that it supposedly should address. So my recommendation to you, given that the staff has requested to continue the track map resolution, that in fact this entire project be continued to the date when the track map is in conformance with the proposed project. Thank you.
Thank you, Lynn. And Chair, that is our last public speaker. I would like to read into the record, though, a email that came in after the deadline. And so it is posted on the website, but you did not actually receive it unless you read the report in your program. This is from Victor Omolchenko, West Hollywood. And he says, for too long now, the West Hollywood Planning Commission has basically rubber stamped flawed projects presented by various developers who've relied on mediocre architects. Enabling the now bland architectural styles that permeate West Hollywood has been a city staff bending over backwards to slavishly accommodate these developers and architects. And unless residents can muster their limited resources and file an appeal of a commission decision, these projects just sail through with no final input from the city council. But let's put some headwind into the mix here. He then references an article on WehoVille dated 9/1 from Lynn Huppengarner. And he goes on, especially troubling is the continued loss of rent-stabilized housing units in West Hollywood with little clarity about the now required one-for-one replacement of such units. Until you get satisfactory answers to the questions and concerns raised in the article, do not approve this badly conceived and overwrought project. Start looking out for the citizens of the city. We are watching and we are voting. Thank you. And Chair, that's all I have for public comment on this item.
Thank you, David. Again, if anyone else would like to speak, I'm going to go ahead and let the applicant begin their rebuttal. But if anyone else would like to speak, please do use the hand signal feature so that we can make sure that you're heard before we move into deliberation. So it's like we're good for now. So I'd like to give the applicant their 5 minutes to rebut.
Thank you, Chair. First, I'd like to thank Tony Castillo for all his help on this project. Ms. Russell referred to it as mildly offensive. I think it's more than mildly offensive to suggest that staff is anything other than strictly professional in all that they do on every project, including ours. I have absolutely no interest in addressing either Ms. Russell or Mr. Omolchenko's comments on aesthetics. I will say to Ms. Russell that I find it beyond offensive to discuss my participation on another commission in the context of this project. As far as Ms. Huppengarner's concerns, we share her concern about complying with the requirement for one-to-one replacement. However, as staff has told you, that will have absolutely no effect on the building form. Right now, if we were to say, we're going to pull the track map entirely, this would be a rental building, and we would easily conform to the one-to-one replacement. We'll work with staff to determine which 9 of the remaining 20 units, the 20 market rate units, would fall under the rent stabilization ordinance. Very simple, completely easy. There is no reason to continue this because it won't change the building. As I said, we will be coming back to you with a track map that will address that issue. If for whatever reason we can't make that work with the track map, we'll withdraw the track map. But it has nothing to do with the building form. It can't change the building form. And to continue the project at this point would be entirely inappropriate. And with that, we simply respectfully ask you to approve the project. This meets the objective standards of the zoning ordinance and the general plan, and it meets all the requirements of housing and zoning. So with that, we as I said, we want to thank staff again, and we respectfully ask that the project be approved. Thank you.
Thank you. David, did we have any more requests for public speaker? No?
No, Chair, we do not.
Okay, great. At this time, do we have any final, well, I suppose we could ask them later. Does anyone have any burning questions for the applicant, or can we move into deliberation? It doesn't preclude us from being able to ask questions later. They're just some procedural things that will have to happen. Okay. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and close the public comment portion of the hearing, and we can move into deliberation. Who would like to kick off conversation? Commissioner Matos, please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Jones. So, when I reviewed the project, I did have some parking concerns that were shared here by some of the colleagues. Specifically, is ensuring that the applicant is going on with the intent of the municipal code, which is to ensure that the affordable units as part of this project have access to the same amount of parking as market rate units. And as we've heard from staff, that is the spirit of this resolution and is the spirit of the municipal code. So one thing that I would like to see clarified, given the discussion here tonight, in the resolution, specifically resolution 1475, is that we spell out that in this project, per section 3.12, that would equate to 2 parking spaces for the 4 affordable units. I think that further clarification of that specific item, 3.12, would help clarify, some of the questions that were raised here today. The other thing that, I have concerns about were making sure that the number of rent stabilized units and affordable units were maintained. As you know, we're in a housing crisis, and we need to make sure that we're not reducing the access to rent stabilized and affordable units. We need to make sure that we are keeping them and keeping them in our housing stock. It sounds like, given the recent developments tonight, the subdivision portion of this will be continued for a later date. So that's a discussion to later be had. But that is a very important part of this project, no doubt. But I guess my question to staff would be, is there language that we could adopt to resolution 1475, section 3.12, that would clarify for the applicant that they are obligated to provide the number of parking spaces to affordable tenants?
Commissioner, I'll jump in just to, I think, tack on to what Tony said off the top, which is the city has some restrictions in that this is a qualifying density bonus project. So the 4 deed restricted covenanted units qualify. Two of those are very low density. That's more than 11% of the base density of 16. And as a result, applicant can take advantage of government code 65915P, I think it's P2, that basically says, similar to the other concessions and waivers that are sought, that if the applicant requests it, then all units, market rate and affordable units, are entitled upon request to just a 0.5 parking space per unit. I don't think that's inconsistent with the existing condition 312, which says affordable units shall be provided with the same number of parking spaces provided to market rate units of the same unit type based on bedroom count. The state law that Tony was referencing says units, regardless of the bedroom count, if they meet that affordability requirement, are entitled to that parking incentive, similar to other waivers and incentives.
So is that to say that language cannot be adopted into this that would stipulate the specifics for this project?
I believe, similar to other concessions and waivers, that there are heightened standards that the commission would have to make in order to sort of preclude an applicant from that. And so for instance, on the concessions, And waivers, the standards is specific adverse impact for concessions, and for waivers, it's that it would physically preclude the full development of the project. So I can certainly hunt for that while we're speaking and deliberating in terms of what the required findings are, but it is similar to how we treat the other concessions and waivers for a qualifying project.
Okay. Well, I will wait for you to come back on that then. You know, but back on the parking, I mean, there is definitely going to be very scarce parking in here. One of the parking spaces is designated van accessible. So I don't believe that can be assigned, you know, but overall, you know, it sounds like a big part of this is being proposed to be continued. So I think that I'll hold the rest of my comments for whenever that comes up. Thank you.
I do want to provide a point of clarification on that, and I'd like to lean on staff and our city attorney for that. So it's my understanding in most cases, just like with the first item that we heard tonight, the project for which we didn't have a public hearing because it doesn't meet the size threshold requirements, that it would be a meeting in which there is a request to subdivide the property. We haven't really had a situation like this since I've been on commission, so I would like to lean on staff and city attorney in terms of, because Commissioner Matos, I want to make sure that if there are things that you want to say, that you have an opportunity to say them in the right meeting context. So Mr. Rosen, can you advise as to what that hearing would look like? Would it be more administrative, or if there would be an opportunity for discussion?
Sure, there is, I think off the top, there is an opportunity for discussion. There's discretionary findings for a tentative track map that have to be found, including compliance with the city's ordinances and also these development plans that are being considered as part of the other resolution. And I'm sure staff can pull that condition, but it would be essentially a full continued public hearing. The way this was noticed, you know, the commission's entitled, it was properly noticed to discuss the project as a whole. It would just be that you would just be continuing to a date certain the component related to the tentative track map. So you would reopen that public hearing. Public would be entitled the same way they are tonight to provide comment and testimony. And so it would look similar to any other public hearing for that item.
I could just go into the comments anyway, if that's okay, Chair Jones.
Sure, please finish your thought.
Yeah. My concern was when I was reviewing the staff report, there was no clear plan as to whether the units would be sold off or if they would be rented out. We've heard that the applicant has clarified that they're going to be rented out. My concern is that we had 13 rent stabilized units, and per the Chaz methodology for affordable units, and making sure that those availability continues in our housing stock is, I think, really important as we move forward. So I'd be interested in discussing that further and ensuring that that is part of the applicant's plan in line with state law and our municipal code to ensure accessibility to the same amount of rent stabilizing affordable units.
Chair, can I comment? Did you want a response on that, Commissioner? I'm sorry.
Sure.
So with the action that we're saying is on the table tonight for the actual construction of the bill, or the entitlement of the building, as the applicant pointed out, that can go forward. If they say, forget it, we don't want to do the map, we're pulling it out, that building would be able to go forward. It would be in compliance. It would be required to have the rent stabilized units. It would be required to have the affordable units. They would all be rental, and it would be as approved. They wish to have a subdivision map. If they continue to wish to have a subdivision map, we'll bring forward one that reflects the fact that there are rent stabilized units on the site and groups those in some way so that they aren't sold off individually and so that it doesn't interfere with their rent stabilization status. And so it would just reflect the subdivision map that would be brought back on a continued hearing would reflect the decision that is made tonight, if that decision is made to approve the building. What won't happen at the continued public hearing is any sort of deliberation or changes to the decision regarding the building itself. That will be done. It will only be for the airspace subdivision of that building. Does that clarify?
That does clarify, because that was the intent of my comments, is just to ensure that if there was any need to build in a guarantee or a codification within the resolution that ensures that we're maintaining 13 rent stabilized units and 4 affordable units, that would be something that I would have wanted to explore, but it sounds like that is already part of this project. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you for the clarification.
Thank you, Commissioner Matos. Who would like to speak next? Commissioner Copeland, I saw your hand first. Commissioner Gregoire, you can follow.
Okay, that's all right. First of all, I have some concerns about postponing just the track map issue, because there are things that are defined in there, and once we entitle this project, we can't go back and have a do-over. So I am concerned about that. There are a lot of questions here. There are a few gray areas. I would feel more comfortable continuing this whole thing and doing this all at one time, honestly, to make sure that everything is intact, everything's in the track that should be, and that we're not missing something in writing or in the resolution that needs to be there, or something doesn't change that would have affected our decision. So that's my opinion. I would be in favor of continuing this whole thing and doing it together. The other comment I have is that it's very concerning to me that 4 years ago, this body made a determination that since the state gives us very little say-so to rent regulated cities about our housing, they did allow us to choose if these one-for-one replacements would be rent stabilized or affordable. So they could be made all affordable. And they recommended that that be how it was done, but that zone text amendment has not reached council yet. And it's been quite a while. That's a little disappointing. I know we've had COVID and some other things going on, but like with SB 9, it seems like it was an urgency there that I don't see with this one. So if we're all truly concerned about affordable housing, we have an opportunity. I would hope that that would be something that would soon be sent to council to be addressed, since I've been told that there's nothing we can do about this here to go ahead and request those as all affordable. The other things with the project are things that we also can't really do anything about, which is the insufficient parking, which I think is going to be overwhelmingly so. If you have a capacity, in 2 and 3 bedrooms and 1 bedrooms of, dozens of people, and you have 24 units that are going to have parking, they're visitors, service providers, I think it's going to be an issue, but that's a common complaint and issue, which we can't do much about. Our general plan and our climate action plan call for tree canopies and trees. And I do appreciate that they're adding more trees here than are currently on site, but this also is a much larger project with a larger footprint. And so I would hope that when you have a setback of 8 feet and then you have balconies protruding 2 feet into that, I don't know that it's realistic that those mature trees are actually going to thrive well in that space. But that's something that I'm sure will be addressed later. Basically, that's all I have. I appreciate the changes that came about from design review, but I still think we're not quite there yet. I'm not quite comfortable with this approving part of this now and then the track map later. I think it's too big of a project and too many questions to do this sort of piecemeal. And like I said, once we don't have some of these assurances on paper, just verbal. And once we give these entitlements, we can't go back later if there's something in the track map that's changed that we don't like or whatever. So that's just my feelings right now. So thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Gregoire, please go ahead.
Much of what I was going to say has already been said by Commissioners Matos and Copeland. I do support moving forward with approving draft resolution 1475 as amended by staff this evening. I don't see that there's any reason why we can't entitle the property to move forward tonight. I don't think, I think the subdivision is completely separate, and in no way is going to affect what we do tonight or be affected by what we do tonight. So I think we should go forward and approve the resolution this evening. The one thing I would say is I want to underscore, I totally agree with Commissioner Copeland's comment about the adequacy of the parking. I don't believe this project has adequate parking. I know our hands are tied by state and local law. All the applicant needs to do is provide 12 parking spaces in this project. We can't mandate anymore. It is not a ground for us to not approve this project. But I just don't believe that there is sufficient parking to serve the needs of the future residents of this project. And I do believe that there will be a negative impact on the neighborhood in terms of tenants needing to park on the street, find parking on the street. So all I would say is that it can't hold up this project, but I would just urge the architect and the applicant in the future to consider, providing more parking in a project like this. We just don't want housing. We want housing that is adequate, that provides adequate services to the future residents of the city of West Hollywood, and projects that aren't going to result in negative impacts on the neighborhood. So it would be great to see additional parking in a project like this. I applaud the applicant saying that the property owners are wanting to encourage people to not have cars and take advantage of the public transportation nearby. But in all fairness, I just don't think the parking will be adequate. And I think there will be some negative impacts. So I think going forward into the future, people should keep that in mind when they're bringing these projects forward. Again, I support the project and will vote in favor of adopting Resolution 1475 as amended.
Thank you, Commissioner Gregoire. Commissioner Lombardi, please go ahead.
Thank you. This is going to be a challenge for me. I want to try to figure out how to say this as concisely as I can. And I love to get in the weeds on things, but I want to really take a macro look at this. And so I'm thinking about this project from two angles. One, as a designer, design process, understanding the challenges of a project or whatever the task is at hand and what it all means holistically. And then also from the public's end as well, what it means for the community. And I think I've said this before and expressed some hesitation in past meetings. Right now, I feel like we're being asked to handle this piecemeal, and I don't know if we really know the outcome. And I'm also thinking about the idea that we're reviewing a track map at a later date. Okay, but I don't think that there's much that's going to substantially change while we're reviewing at that point. So today, what we're looking at now is what we'll be looking at. And I want to think about ways that we could adapt resolutions, but I think that there are some design related challenges here in the project that we don't have clarity on. And I wouldn't really know how to go about making those resolutions modified. There's a lot of unknowns. And again, to kind of look at it from the public standpoint, based on what we've heard today in this meeting, we have a project that's asking to have essentially luxury scale units above what our code is allowing. And they're justifying that on cost, and I understand that. But there doesn't seem to be clarity in terms of the number of affordable units that are being delivered. Their size is small, and it sounds like that's going to be resolved later via the tract map. But I think that we are going to get ourselves in a situation where we can't capture needs and concerns right now with the information that we have. Things are still rather fluid. just like in design, I really do not like when I get requests, can you issue this, floor by floor? Can you issue this area and the next area? That's not a logical approach in my mind, because something comes up inevitably when you look at the next area, and then you can't go back again because it's already out there. So I think we're in that sort of situation right now. And I'm looking at it based on the scale of the project too. It's not a huge project, but this is about the size of some of the larger residential projects that we see in the city. And I think it's not comparable to what we heard earlier in any way whatsoever. So I don't know why we would push something forward without clarity, especially given past precedent on voting on this commission and public sentiment. So I will say right now, I'm very uncomfortable moving forward in any capacity on this.
Commissioner Lombardi, can you please be more specific about the specific design concerns that you have? I just want to make sure it's spoken into the record and so that everyone's clear on what we're discussing.
Okay. Well, I think that the specific design concerns that I have are that we understand the project's going to be rented, but we understand there's an interest to create a tract map and to potentially build in flexibility to this project as well. And we don't understand how all of this will be divided out. There's also questions about parking, and all of this comes into play with each other. And so I don't know how we address all of that today.
Okay, Commissioner Carballero, I saw you raise your hand.
No, just a comment on Commissioner Lombardi. How is that a design issue though?
Well, I think it's a design issue because I'm still confused by some of the configurations I'm seeing on the first floor, and it's making me really nervous about what that means for a tract map. Maybe I'm overly concerned about it, but I like to have a lot of clarity in things when I'm making a decision, and I don't feel like I have that right now.
Because I thought staff did a really great job of clarifying what will happen if basically they can't convert those lower floor apartments, but you're not convinced.
I'd feel more comfortable if we knew right now whether a tract map was coming forward or not and what that was.
So do we have that ability, Chair Jones or Council? I'm
going to let the city attorney speak. He has his little West Hollywood hand raised. Very cute. I'm going to let him speak, and we can continue from there.
All right. Yeah, I think there's a fair amount of items just in the first sort of portion of deliberations I want to address sort of in order. And then don't let me forget the most recent question from Commissioner Carballero. I think there's just been a couple things where I think, this is a Housing Accountability Act project. So I do just want to reference for our planning commissioner that the project does meet the objective standards under state law. And as such, in order to deny the project, there would have to be a documented health and safety code issued that would be a result of the project. And I mention that because when we have an HAA project, there's been some discussion of sort of design related challenges, but the city's limited to the objective standards and criteria within our municipal code in evaluating whether or not to approve a qualifying housing development project of over 5 units. And so with respect to design, there are some limitations placed on the commission on that front. I also wanted to note, I know there's been discussion about parking as part of the deliberation, and Commissioner Matos, I did tell him I would follow up. The state law and that requirement that there be a 0.5 parking space under density bonus law, that was part of AB 2345. So it's within the last, I think, 3 years or so. But the language in the code does say that if you meet that criteria, where you have at least 11% very low income units and you're within a half mile of a major transit stop, the city shall provide, and it's not permissive, it's a requirement, shall provide a parking ratio that's not more than 0.5 spaces per unit, regardless of bedroom count, at developers' request. So I know there was also some discussion about sort of parking concerns in the guise of sort of design challenges. And I think it is worth noting that the project does qualify for that 0.5 spaces per unit, and that the language of the statute contemplates that's going to be required as part of a density bonus. And then with respect, let's see, I think those were the ones I mainly wanted to hit. And Commissioner Carballero, can you remind me that most recent request?
Sorry, repeat that again.
There was a question at the end and the chair threw it to me and I've already forgotten now.
No, whether we just have the right to actually just continue this completely.
Yeah, thank you. So I think the other thing for the commission to think about is we're limited as a city in having 5 total hearings. That includes continuances and appeals and study sessions associated with a qualifying housing development project. So I believe this is just our second of 5 if we've had 1 design review. But I think it's worth noting that there is a streamline requirement to consider these housing development projects within a set amount of hearings that include continuances. So I do want the commission to be cognizant of that. And as Jen mentioned, I believe earlier, with respect to the tentative track map, those will have their own findings and consideration. It's true that the item that staff is recommending being considered tonight is the other project entitlements, where it is relevant to talk about these items, but there is a limitation just on the total number of hearings before a final decision is reached. And that any denial for the project be based on sort of a heightened standard of a specific adverse impact to health and safety. So those are just sort of additional backgrounds on some of the streamlined provisions that the applicant is entitled to under state law. And I wanted to just articulate that as part of these deliberations.
Thank you, City Attorney. So we have 3 hands raised right now, one from kind of every constituency. We have the applicant wanting to speak. We have Jennifer wanting to speak. So I'm going to let Jennifer speak first, and we'll go from there.
Thank you. I just wanted to add to the streamlining considerations. Yes, there is a limitation on the number of hearings, but there's also a limitation on the number of days that we can spend reviewing a project once it is deemed complete. This project was deemed complete on April, I had it up here, I think April 21st or something like that. So we have an initial period of 60 days after that we must make a decision on the project, and then we can get an extension, mutually agreed upon extension up to 90 days. We have only about 15 days left on that. So, there are limitations in timing as well as the number of hearings that I wanted to bring to the commission's attention. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Matos, please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Jones. Mr. Rosen, I think you may have misunderstood my question. My question, obviously, I understand that state law allows them under the density bonus portion to have the 0.5 parking spaces. What I'm talking about is in our resolution 1475, it says, and I quote, affordable units shall be provided with the same number of parking spaces provided to the market rate units of the same type of unit with the same bedroom count. By that measure, we would ensure that the 4 1-bedroom affordable units have the same amount of parking as the market rate 1-bedroom units, which is under the density bonus 0.5. I am asking, given that there was some confusion earlier from the applicant, if there is a way under that specific part of the resolution 3.12 that we're able to clarify for the applicant and for the record that the 4 affordable units in this project are entitled to 0.5 parking spaces times 4 affordable units, which equals 2. I'm not asking that they have 2 parking spaces each. I'm asking that.
My apologies, Commissioner. I was mistaken in what you were seeking. I think I am not familiar with how the city generally handles sort of a restriction, so I would pass it to staff in terms of if that's common in our conditions. I think you're right that they're entitled to the same amount of parking spaces. Like you said, if there's 4 affordable units, that's 2 parking spaces. So my apologies on that. I think that's accurate. Whether or not that's something that's handled as a condition of approval or potentially part of the CC&Rs that the city has to bless for approval, that I don't know offhand. So I would defer to staff on that piece, but I think you're absolutely right. And my apologies for misunderstanding.
Thank you. So just to clarify again, would that be able to be codified in the resolution?
Well, I think the better question is, and Isaac, you can tell us, and I don't mean to be curt. I just want to make sure that we're doing this in a way that is respectful of the ZO and of the general plan and of procedurally the way this is supposed to go. Would we be better advised to recommend that this be included in the CCNRs? Or could we condition this so that it is required? I just want to make sure that we're working within the bounds of our criteria for conditioning and consideration here.
I think you could include a condition if that's consistent with sort of the city's past practice. And that's sort of why I wanted to defer. I do think you have to have a nexus in your condition between the impact. And so if the commission wanted to make a finding that entitling 2 parking spaces to be reserved for the 4 affordable units dealt with the specific sort of nexus of the project impact, I don't have a problem with that, but I'd also defer to how city handles those kind of parking plans in its sort of general review of the projects, and if that is something that is handled in the CCNRs. So I apologize. Yeah.
No, it's okay. It's okay. And this is one of those things we may not know. I don't expect staff to know, but I believe that part of the reso already states the city's code. Jennifer, I don't know if you have more reference than I do as to whether or not that's ever been conditioned before.
No,
3.12.
I don't know that we've specifically put in a number there. I don't think we're opposed to it. The question of whether we'd want to put it in this resolution or the CCNRs, I would say both. We would put it in tonight to make sure that it's in there, because I know there are concerns that things would change going forward with a tract map. And then and then when the map comes back, we put it in that one too. And then it's in both places. But again, like the CCNRs will probably, no, I think that would be fine. Yeah, I don't have a problem with that.
Okay. Commissioner Caballero, did you have additional comments? I want to make sure that you're able to speak in totality. Sure. And Commissioner Copeland, I saw your hand, so you can speak next.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, this conversation tonight has been very thorough, very interesting. I mean, I thought the staff report was very well written, and a lot of the questions that were asked, I understand why they were asked, but if you've worked with Ed, or if we've reviewed Ed Levin's projects in the past, we know that he dots his I's and he crosses his T's, and he's very thorough with all his calculations. And I thought the staff report did a good job of explaining them. The parking, like in regard to the design review, I mean, our design review conversation was a good, thorough conversation, and we asked some great questions, and Ed was able to respond, whether it was code related or whether we even had the right to really sort of dictate some of the things that we were asking. I know one of the things that I was talking about was trying to preserve more native soil and trying to remove parking spaces, not maintain the parking spaces that we had. And the applicant has maintained more parking spaces than they need to provide. And we had a conversation about native soil versus parking, what's more valuable, our environment or the cars. And the state really asks us at this point to future think, not think how we park and live necessarily today or even 10 years ago. We are evolving, and we've had so many public comments over the last 5 years that I've been on commission where people comment about how they don't have cars and they do use transit, or they do walk around the city for those people who can do that. So in regards to contextualism, and whether this, one of the things I mentioned during our design review is that I think the language that has evolved out of this design offices over the last few years is really resolving itself in a way that creates a handsome building on San Vicente Boulevard. And it may not be everybody's taste, but there's no context there to really wrap into in terms from a design language point of view. And I appreciate that Ed didn't comment on design, because the design comments because we really don't have that much say in that. And I just want to say that because I do think the design language is evolved. I do think it's a handsome building. I do think it's a good addition to San Vicente Boulevard. We do have more trees. We do have more permeability. I see the project as a plus for our community.
Thank you. Commissioner Copeland, please go ahead.
No, I just had a quick question. You mentioned sort of a time restraint as far as doing a continuance of this. Is the track map under that same time frame as the rest of this? I mean, the 15-day limit or whatever, is that, since that's being continued, that doesn't have the same restraints that the rest of this?
Yeah, it does have time constraints. It's not quite the same. We spoke with the applicant earlier and they were amenable to a continuation of the track map piece.
And I would add, Commissioner, just for reference, that because the housing development project can be entitled outside of needing the tentative track map, that is the component of the SB 330 project that is entitled to some of those streamlined provisions and limitations that we were talking about. Whereas the tentative track map is not necessary for the project to proceed as contemplated for those types of qualifying housing projects.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments from commissioners? Okay, so I'm going to make my comments and then I want to try to get to some kind of a, I don't know if we'll be able to do it, but some kind of a consensus this evening. So I want to state for the record that I was actually on commission when this project first came before in a very different form with a different designer, someone who's not actually an architect or an engineer for that matter. On September 15th or September 17th of 2015, and I was the sole no vote on that project. And so I can say with confidence that this is a far superior project. And there's been a lot of swirl today with some of the correspondence we received and some of the correspondence from the applicant's representative, the architect specifically. But I want to try to separate how we might feel about things from what our legal obligation is here this evening. And this doesn't mean that I want everyone here to feel heard. I also want to say to everyone in the audience, we absolutely cannot do our jobs without you, Commissioner Hoopen. See, I'm so used to saying Commissioner Hoopen-Garner. Lynn Hoopen-Garner, we cannot do our jobs without people like you showing up and giving the comments that you do. So I want to thank every single person who called in tonight, who's waited, you know, now it's been, I think, 2 hours and 24 minutes that we've been on this evening to hear this conversation, this deliberation that we're having. So, but again, I want to be mindful of our duty as planning commissioners, which is to have the public hearing, make sure that things are in compliance with the zoning ordinance and the general plan, and also with state law. And I think ultimately to make sure that the city doesn't get sued. And I know that sounds a little harsh, but that is one of our jobs. We really are kind of the guardians in this situation. And so again, I don't want anyone to feel uncomfortable, but I'm trying to separate how we might feel about things, about the parking, et cetera, from what our legal obligation is here and what the framework for the criteria that we can actually have for this project are. So with that being said, I have just a couple of notes. A lot of the things that I had questions about or have been said have already been asked or stated. But I do want to remind the community and my fellow commissioners that even if an applicant applies for a tract map, it definitely does not preclude the applicant or owner from renting the units as apartments indefinitely, certainly not if they're covenanted. So we see this all the time. It's just, I think, really a way to make sure that the project or the parcel, the project itself, the building, can retain additional value or more value should it be handed off or sold to another entity. So I don't have an issue with that. We see this very regularly, actually. There's never, any guarantee that they will be operated as condos, even if they do apply for a tract map. So I'm going to take the applicant at their word, knowing that, especially with the the affordable housing and rent stabilized units, that they would be held to keeping those as such for the required period of time. So there's no issue for me there. I also, again, want to emphasize, and I think we've already said this or discussed this, but, you know, of course, it's our responsibility to ask questions and to ensure that projects conform to our code, again, our state law and general plan, but it's also our responsibility to make sure that we are approving legally conforming projects in a timely way. Net, and again, whatever feelings anyone may have about this, I don't want to excuse those or to trivialize those, but we need more housing in the state right now. That's just a fact. So I guess those are my general comments. I did also want to make a comment about parking. You know, if you look at the fabric of the city, a lot of the issues we have with parking are not because of new buildings, they're because of old buildings that did not have parking that's up to current code because people didn't have cars. My building is probably 60 plus years old. I used to live in a building that's almost 100 years old. So both of which are in West Hollywood. So again, the applicant has designed the project in such a way that it provides more than the required amount of parking. And for that reason, and I had some questions for the applicant during our meeting yesterday, and I felt satisfied that they were addressed. No, not everyone in the building is going to have a parking space, but it also seems as though there won't be any situation where someone who has a space, just one space, will be tandem parking, which was really my biggest issue. And they were able to add, I believe, a couple of spaces following design review, if I'm not mistaken. So at this point, I would be inclined to move this forward, as I believe as amended per staff. But we now find ourselves in a situation, if I'm not mistaken, although a vote has not been called, where it's three commissioners who would not want to move it forward and 3 who would. If I'm hearing that correctly. I do want to state too that I believe I don't think it would be legally viable for us to continue this at this point as a hearing. And again, I want to defer to city attorney and to Jennifer and Tony, but I don't believe that we are able to continue this. Also, we do have Mr. Levin has raised his hand. I will reopen the public comment portion of the public hearing and let him speak.
Thank you, Chair. At this point, we need to have this project approved. We're subject to permit streamlining. We will withdraw the request for approval of resolution 1476 for the track map. This is a rental housing developer. That's all they want. If we're going to get hung up on this because of track map issues that have nothing to do with the design of the project or the operation or the units, we will withdraw the request for approval of the track map.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Again, I personally don't see an issue with us moving this forward and seeing the track map and continuing parts of our conversation about this. I do trust in our staff. And I do believe that if they've brought a project with kind of this many concessions forward and feel that it's in a good place and are okay recommending it, I am okay with recommending to move it forward at this time. But Commissioner Lombardi, please go ahead.
Oh, and Chair, just a procedural note. We accepted public comment from applicant. I just want to note we have moved back.
We're closing the hearing again. Thank you.
We're closing the hearing again. And
thank you for checking me there. Appreciate it.
And one additional note, if okay, or Commissioner Lombardi can go. I realize I had one comment from Commissioner Copeland I didn't address, but I could do that now, or
please go ahead. Yeah, I think it's important.
My apologies for stepping in. Commissioner Copeland had asked earlier, I think, on 2 points related to the affordable unit mix and whether the commission was empowered to require those be deed restricted affordable as opposed to rent stabilized. And I mentioned that we did have a ZTA, and it sounds like that was direction from council to move that forward. And I think I mentioned, that would not be applicable until that's effective. I wanted to add on to that to just say, well, the ZTA, when adopted, wouldn't be effective for this project because the data was deemed complete. I wanted to clarify and make sure it wasn't confusing on the record that the city and its decision makers have the authority to require affordable deed restricted units versus RSO units. It just creates a different project that may have different density bonus concessions and require sort of working with the applicant proactively. So I just wanted to make sure I was clear on that point.
Commissioner Copeland, please go ahead.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to ask Mr. Rosen, just so I'm clear on that. So at this time, we do not have the authority to request that all 13 be affordable, is what you're saying. The reason I was confused is because with regard to SB 9, this wasn't codified before the city, like this. Well, I was trying to determine the difference between the two of them because that one went pretty quickly, and it seems like the same sort of situation, but being handled differently. So that's why I wanted to clarify and be sure and reaffirm that we do not have the authority to, as a quasi judicial body or as the Planning Commission, to request that they all be affordable at this time.
I think the city could request it. It just would impact, I think, how the project is able to be penciled out from the applicant. So doing so under the timing constraints might be challenging because they would be entitled to a different set of concessions and incentives under density bonus law, and it may not be financially feasible. But it doesn't mean that under state law, the city and its decision makers can't require those be deed restricted affordable versus RSO. The option is it's one of those two, but the project that staff has been working with applicant on has been that 9 of those units be changed to, that 9 of those units follow the city's RSO ordinance, and the 4 that are required otherwise to meet the density bonus are deed restricted affordable.
So in short, we actually could require it, but it would require some new calculations and some changes in the plans and so forth in the project.
I think that the project before the commission tonight under SB 330 is based on this sort of criteria. And so I think it would be challenging to amend this project. They would have to submit essentially a new project application. And I think the commission would have to make findings for why this project could not be approved. And my apologies, I don't mean to insert a degree of uncertainty on this. I think all the timelines that were discussed on the record remain intact. This project has to be improved within the timelines required, and so long as it meets objective criteria. But it's not to say that the commission is restricted more generally from expressing that preference or wanting that seen in future projects.
Thank you.
We don't currently have a motion on the floor. Would anyone like to make a motion at this time?
Before a motion is made, Chair, if I may.
So your motion, I
No.
thought you had said you would be inclined to move it forward as amended.
No, I just have a question.
Please go ahead. Sure.
I just want to clarify just one final time before a motion is made. My intent with ensuring that there is compliance with that element of the parking code is to ensure that the lack of parking is not passed on to the affordable unit tenants. There's 20 parking spaces in this project, and there's 24 units, and there's 4 affordable units. My only intent was to ensure that those lack of parking isn't just simply passed on to the people that are living in the low income housing. So that's why I'd asked for it, and that's why I had made that a point, especially given earlier some of the applicants' confusion around what the city did or did not support via that specific part of the resolution. So I just want to ask just one final time if that's able to get clarified for the record in some form, codified in some form.
It sounds like per Jennifer, we are able to condition it if we want.
Okay, well then I would move the project forward with the condition that we clarify the parking for the low income occupants of this building.
Noted. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
I do have a question, and I want to make sure that in keeping with kind of best practices here, is this something that the applicant would be amenable to? Try to build bridges here, folks.
You're opening the hearing so that we can speak?
Yes, thank you for checking me. Yes, I am
in-
going to reopen the hearing so that you may comment, please.
In general, we've never seen a special condition for this. We're subject to 3.12 precisely as any other applicant is. We're subject to how the city interprets 3.12. And I with all due respect, I'm just not sure what changing 3.12 actually accomplishes. But as I said, we're perfectly okay following the law.
All right, thank you, Mr. Levin. I will close the hearing. We can go back into deliberation. So we do have a motion, and Commissioner Lombardi, please go ahead.
Just to help bring some clarity regarding the motion in item 3.2, I don't have any strong preference or opinion there. That makes sense to me if that's sort of the will of what this commission wants. I don't have as much insight into where it seems like everyone stands right now, but just to clarify on my end, I definitely have some concerns that go beyond just the track map and the splitting of that resolution off from what we're deciding on today. But that being said, overall, the project looks good. I just have concerns about what maybe is being advertised today versus what the outcome is. But I am trying to look at this also in terms of how we can capture those items. And I don't actually see personally much that would be changed in the resolutions or anything that's factual that would make me say no to the project. So, overall, I'm just sort of, the process is not as clear to me right now in terms of the overall intent. And I feel like the public probably would have a similar sentiment. It seems like we're being asked to offer very large, generous units, then the affordable component is kind of minimal. But I don't see anything that wouldn't make this move forward, and I would be in support of the project. I just want to, lend that opinion before I make any votes, so everyone knows.
Again, and if you do have grievances, I encourage you to state them on the record. That's what we're here for. So, but we do have a motion and a second on the floor. Do we have any more deliberation before we call the question?
I'm seeing Commissioner Copeland.
I just have one question, maybe for legal or for staff. The applicant stated that they would withdraw the track map request. Is this something that could be brought back at a later date? They could submit this again at a future date, is that correct? Even after it's withdrawn, it could come back.
They could, if they did it after there were tenants in it, it would be more complicated. It would be a conversion at that point. But it would have the same, it would still come to Planning Commission.
Okay, thank you.
And if I could ask the maker of the motion just for clarification. So the motion on the floor was to add to condition 3.12 to move the project forward, clarifying that the parking for low-income tenants of the building is the same as market rate tenants. Is that correct?
I mean, that's it as written. I was just merely asking for some sort of reference to the discussion we had here tonight with the applicant. When I first raised this as an issue, there were questions about how the city would interpret that specific item. I brought forward something to clarify the interpretation. And now we're getting that we're not sure what that would accomplish. So I'm a bit confused. But yeah.
Commissioner Matos, I second a motion that basically it's an amendment to 3.12 stating that the low-income housing, 2 spaces would be saved for the 4 low-income housing units, not leaving 3.12 as written.
Yeah. And that's what I thought that we were doing as well, Commissioner.
And I think Tony has some language that he can read into the record to that effect.
Yes, if I may, Chair. So condition 3.12 currently reads, affordable units shall be provided with the same number of parking spaces provided to market rate units of the same unit type based on bedroom count. We can add comma, including 1 parking space each reserved for 2 affordable units.
Thank you. That captures the spirit of the motion. And, for the record, I do have concerns and I voiced them. But, to Chair Jones's point, we are legally obligated at this point, it looks like, from a timing perspective and what we're required to do as a commission to move forward. So I'm going to let my motion stand. Thank you.
Should it be at least 2 spaces? We don't want to say it has to be 2 spaces reserved for the affordable units.
I think
Sorry.
I was to say, I think per the way that the code is written, if I'm understanding correctly, that we would want to keep it as what is legally required. I welcome city attorney's feedback here.
Yeah, I think just because there's been some deliberation, Tony, would you read one more time for the maker of the motion and the second, the revised condition in full?
Sure. Affordable units shall be provided with the same number of parking spaces provided to market rate units of the same unit type based on bedroom count, comma, including 1 parking space each reserved for 2 affordable units.
Thank you. I think I'm comfortable from my perspective on the language of that stated condition.
Would it help and would it be acceptable, Isaac, to after the original condition before the added language, add no fewer than? So including no fewer than 1 parking space each reserved for 2 affordable units, so that they want to give everybody 2 parking spaces, they can allocate them differently, but that would be the minimum. Is that okay? Does that address your concerns, Commissioner Gorgois?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor with some clarity requested of the motion maker and the second. That condition 3.12 read, affordable units shall be provided with the same number of parking spaces provided to market rate units of the same unit type based on bedroom count, comma, including no fewer than 1 parking space each reserved for each 2 affordable units.
Commissioners Matos and Caballero, are you aligned?
Yeah.
With the amended motion as worded?
Yeah.
Madam Chair, if I may, there's also the 3 additional conditions that were revised. I just want to make sure those are included in the motion if commission so chooses.
Okay, so are we ready to call the question?
I'd like just an affirmative from Commissioners Matos and Carvalho that language for 3.12 was acceptable, and then the 3 additional revisions to the conditions that Tony read at the start of the item are acceptable as well before it's called for a vote.
Could I ask you to read the new part of that? Because there was a bit of a stumble. Could you read that final part one last time? The addition to 3.12.
Sure. Affordable units shall be provided with the same number of parking spaces provided to market rate units of the same unit type based on bedroom count, comma, including no fewer than one parking space reserved for each 2 affordable units.
Well, but there's 4 affordable units, right?
1 parking space reserved for each 2 affordable units.
Okay.
Okay, unless there's further deliberation, David, can you please go ahead and call the vote?
I'm sorry, Chair. I just want to make sure that's consistent with the second from Commissioner Carvalho.
Yes, but why are we including each?
Go ahead, Jen. Sorry.
The way it was written is 1 parking space each reserved for 2 affordable units. We can say it differently if you want to.
No, it was just confusing to me at first, but if everybody agrees, then that's fine.
Okay.
It was confusing for me as well, but at this point, I'm prepared to move forward because it captures the intent.
Okay, with that, David, can you please go ahead and call the vote?
Thank you, Chair. I just want to clarify first that resolution 22-1476, the subdivision is being withdrawn and it would not be part of this recommendation.
It was not my understanding that was part of this this motion.
Okay. Commissioner Matos.
Aye.
Commissioner Lombardi.
Aye.
Commissioner Carvalho.
Yes.
Commissioner Copeland.
No.
Commissioner Gregoire.
Aye.
Chair Jones.
Yes.
And the motion passes, approving resolution number 22-1475 as amended by 5 ayes, 1 no by Commissioner Copeland, and Vice Chair Thomas as absent. And there is an appeal process for this. The resolution the Planning Commission just approved memorializes the Commission's final action on this matter. This action is subject to appeal to the City Council. Appeals must be submitted within 10 calendar days from this date to the City Clerk's office. Appeals must be in writing and accompanied by the required fees. The City Clerk's office can provide appeal forms and waiver of fees.
Thank you, David. And thanks everyone for your patience. Sometimes working through these, government is not always efficient, but it is, we hope, just. So thank you for your patience. Item 12 is new business. Item 12A is our Planning Commission subcommittee appointments. I have reviewed and will be making appointments and amendments tonight for our subcommittees. And David, unless there's any specific language that I need to use, I'm just going to go ahead and rattle those off now, if that's okay.
That'd be fine, Chair.
Great, thank you. So subcommittee appointments have been made as follows. Design Review Subcommittee will be Commissioner Carvalho, Commissioner Lombardi, and me. Long Range Planning Project Subcommittee will be Vice Chair Thomas, Commissioner Gregoire, and Commissioner Copeland. Sunset Arts and Advertising Subcommittee will be Commissioner Lombardi, Commissioner Matos, and me. 1343 Laurel Avenue Visions Concept Committee will be Commissioner Carvalho, Vice Chair Thomas, and Commissioner Copeland. The Climate Action and Adaptation Plan, or CAP, will be Commissioner Thomas and Commissioner Carvalho.
Noted. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Item 13 is unfinished business. There is none. Item 14 is excluded consent calendar. There is none. Item 15A is items from staff. We have our planning manager's update.
Good evening, Commission. First of all, welcome to our new commissioner, Commissioner Matos. Good to see you here. And I will jump right in. I've got a few things to talk about tonight. First of all, we have a special message from our housing folks, and I will read that for you. It's a reminder about our ADU program. So the city of West Hollywood invites residential property owners in West Hollywood to apply for the West Hollywood ADU pilot program, which is a new affordable housing initiative to incentivize property owners to create an affordable rental unit on a single family or multifamily property. The program offers comprehensive assistance for financing, designing, permitting, and constructing a new ADU in the city of West Hollywood. The program is also offering low-interest loans up to $150,000 to design and build ADUs via conversion of existing accessory structures, new construction, or on multifamily developments in the city. Conversion projects include converting an existing garage or other on-site structure. New construction includes ground-up or prefabricated modular units. Multifamily development includes detached or attached conversion or new construction. Applicants for the West Hollywood ADU pilot program must meet the following criteria. A single family property where the ADU will be located must be owner occupied for the past year as the property owner's primary residence. And for either single family or multifamily property, the property owner must rent the ADU to a Section 8 voucher holder for the city's inclusionary housing waitlist for a minimum of 7 continuous years. West Hollywood ADU pilot program applications must be submitted digitally by Friday, September 30th, 2022 at 5 p.m. For additional information about the city's West Hollywood accessory dwelling unit ADU pilot program, please visit www.weho.org/ADU pilot or contact Allison Bartle, City of West Hollywood Project Development Administrator at 323-848-6323 or at adupilot@weho.org. So that's a great program. So hopefully we can get that message out. The next order of business I had for you all is whether you wanted to discuss in-person meetings.
Great question. I think what I'd like to understand more about is how council and other commissions are conducting their business right now. I know council is in person, are they not?
They are. They have a hybrid component of the meeting. I think several other commissions have delayed their implementation or they're back to being in person. Particularly commissions that do not meet in the council chambers, and so they don't have the ability to have a wider streaming platform or accessibility. So I'm not sure that there are very many that are going back in person at this moment.
Okay. Is rent stabilization back in person yet?
I don't know.
Can this be an item for discussion? Can we discuss this now, or do we need to actually agendize it for a future meeting?
No, we can talk about it.
Okay, I'd like to open up conversation among the commissioners. I think at the time when we had agreed to go, we had one meeting that was in person for the first time in 2.5+ years. And then at that meeting decided to go back to virtual because at that time we were pretty certain that the County of Los Angeles was going to implement an indoor mask mandate, which they did not. So I'm also curious, Jennifer, if there's a scenario in which we're still able to conduct subcommittee meetings virtually and still do planning commission meetings in person, should we opt to go that route?
Yes, subcommittee meetings can stay virtual. It's not tied to the planning commission. The only one would be long range planning project subcommittee, because there's not, I think it's difficult because it's right before the planning commission meeting.
Sure. Understood.
Mm-hmm.
I'm open to the whims of the commission. I'd like to hear input from people. I want people to feel safe and I want them to feel healthy. So, again, we live in a community that has already dealt with an epidemic. So I just want to make sure that we're keeping in consideration our commissioners. Again, this would be a situation whereby it sounds like we would be meeting in person, but people could either comment in person or they would be able to comment over the phone. Is that correct?
That's my understanding at this time, yes.
Okay. So please, anyone, I'd love to hear your input on this. There's no wrong or right answer, so I just want to, Commissioner Lombardi, please go ahead. Commissioner Gregoire, you're next.
Sure. I think I'm just going to ask a question that I've asked before, but in case it's changed, there is no current timeline or scenario where there'd be an option for hybrid within the commission itself, because we have had instances where someone's sick and then they cannot participate.
I think it's
Okay.
a Brown Act issue. I think it's an issue of people being remote and in person. It would need to be all or nothing. That's my understanding.
Yeah, there
Commissioner
are some,
Gregoire. Oh,
yeah,
Jennifer, go
sorry.
ahead. Sorry.
I
No,
was
go
just
ahead,
going to
please.
say there are really pretty robust noticing requirements if there are different locations, and it's not really feasible.
I think also keeping in mind that we want to keep public participation at a peak, and knowing that it's always, I don't want to say a burden, but it is a special task for someone in the public to make the time to come to a meeting or sign into a meeting. So I also want to make sure we're taking that into account. And also, if staff has feelings about this too, please weigh in. I mean, we're all kind of dealing with this weird, mostly post-pandemic kind of partly back, like hybridized situation. So I do want to hear from everybody on commission as to what their preference would be. We can keep it virtual and discuss this at a later time. It's completely up to you.
I don't feel strongly either way. I feel safe going back to council chambers. I'm actually a huge fan of Zoom. I find it easier to hear and see everybody. When the one meeting we were in person, there was some public comment that was virtual, and I had a really hard time hearing the public comment. I wish we could stay on Zoom forever. But I don't feel strongly either way, and I feel safe going back to council chambers, but I defer to the rest of my fellow commissioners.
Commissioner Caballero, please go ahead.
Yeah, I'm with the Zoom platform group. Like I said last time, it's like, like cooling that huge room, having us all drive there, it just seems like an unnecessary expense, and the carbon footprint. And like I keep on, like, the state just passed a $64 billion, bill last night, trying to get us all to future think. And I just feel like this platform kind of plays into that a lot better. We're more focused, I think, in conversation via Zoom than we are, I think, in person. At least that's what I've experienced from going from in person to Zoom. So I think this is working. It keeps everybody focused, and the conversation seems to be more robust.
Okay. Jennifer, might we have the option of, unless any other commissioners have comments, and we do want to hear them if you have them, might we keep things virtual for now and move this forward? Maybe, I mean, I know there's a winter surge is expected or predicted at this point. I know the Omicron booster is supposed to come out as soon as next week. Mm-hmm. So maybe we table this until either post-holiday or, I don't know, closer to the middle of the fourth quarter.
Absolutely. This can certainly be a wait and see type of thing, and we can see how things go.
Is everyone comfortable with that? I want to make sure I'm not acting unilaterally. Good. Okay. If you're not, please say something. I don't want anyone to feel unheard. Okay. Jennifer, please go ahead.
Okay, so the next thing is my typical trip through our upcoming calendars. We do, as I talked about in the last couple of meetings, we have a pretty heavy agenda for all of our meetings in the fall. So next meeting on September 15th, we'll be hearing another subdivision similar to the one we heard tonight that is for a project that has been approved already. But we're also going to hear a mixed use project at 8555 Santa Monica Boulevard. This has been continued from actually a couple of years ago because they had added some land to their project. So it's been reanalyzed, and the final EIR for the this version of the project is available on our website. You go to weho.org and in the search box type environmental documents, you can get to the page and it's the first link. Again, the address is 8555 Santa Monica Boulevard. And that final EIR is available on our website. If you have trouble finding it, please feel free to reach out to me and I can help you. So that's September 15th. We're also going to hear a zone text amendment on ADUs, cleaning up some of the language regarding the height. On October 6th, we will be reviewing another subdivision and also West Hollywood West Design Review Standards update. On October 20th, we have a couple of billboards. We're looking at a billboard that's actually just a conversion of an existing billboard at Santa Monica and at the Holloway Motel, along with a general plan consistency because that's a city project. And we'll get into what that all means when we get to that project. A mixed use project at 8500 Santa Monica Boulevard, which is at the corner of Santa Monica and La Cienega. Another billboard at the Whiskey, which is 8901 Sunset. And environmental impact report public comment hearing on 9160 to 9176 Sunset. That's the old Hornburg Jaguar dealership site. And an update on our outdoor dining program as we move sort of from our outzone pandemic related outdoor dining into a more permanent program.
Jennifer, these are for the 1020 meeting, is that correct?
1020, that's correct.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Moving to design review subcommittee. We don't have anything upcoming on design review subcommittee at this time. We do have one on the Sunset Arts and Advertising subcommittee on September 22nd for 8590 Sunset. That is also, obviously it's a digital billboard. That's what that subcommittee looks at. And then for long range planning project subcommittee on September 15th, we'll be looking at design standards for outdoor dining or outzones. New housing categories, clarifying and defining various housing types in the municipal code, and a zone text amendment regarding gender neutral multi-stall bathrooms. And then on October 20th, we'll be reviewing hotel rooftop additions and a zone text amendment about evaluating parking minimums. And that's all we have coming up on this agenda. And I am here if you have any questions about any of that.
Thank you. We have any questions from commissioners for Jennifer? Commissioner Gregoire, please go ahead.
It's not a question. I just note I live at the corner of La Cienega and Santa Monica Boulevard, and I'm going to have to recuse myself from about 4 of the upcoming matters because I live within 500 feet. So I just wanted to give everybody a heads up about that. I don't imagine we'll have any quorum issues at this point, but I figured I'd mention that.
Commissioner Gregoire, to be clear, are you a property owner or a renter?
I am a property owner.
Okay. Okay.
And
thank you.
Commissioner Gregoire, you and I can also discuss as well, just in advance of those items.
Okay.
Thank you. I do want to call out, I will not be at the October 6th meeting. I flagged this at our last meeting, but I will not be at that meeting. Okay, Jennifer, is that everything you have for now?
That's it for me.
Thank you very much. Item 16 is public comment. David, do we have any public speakers at this time?
Chair, we do. We have one public speaker that requested to speak. That would be Lynn Russell will be our first speaker and only speaker. Lynn, go ahead, unmute, *6, and you'll have 3 minutes.
Hi, good evening again. It's Lynn Russell, West Hollywood. A rather astute, critically thinking individual recently brought something to my attention, being the number of projects on the east side that were recently approved that may have taken advantage of benefits resulting from transit accessibility. Please consider this as the City Council seems in favor of a Fairfax-San Vicente route rather than a La Brea extension. And where does that leave the residents of these affordable and low-income housing that will be built on the east side? Question becomes, how will these new developments be neglected for that capability? Or Will the residents be relegated to scooters and/or bicycles if the Fairfax and San Vicente route is decided? Thank you.
Thank you, Lynn. And Chair, that is all the public speakers we have.
Thank you, David. Item 17 is items from commissioners. Commissioner comments to anyone who would like to speak at this time? Wow, really? Okay, I am going to close out with one comment because I just want to make sure that it's known. Anyone who shows up to these meetings is already going the extra mile to make an effort to be present and be involved in their community. And that's laudable and it is honorable. And I think any of us who have served in this commission, whether it's one meeting or I don't even know of 100 meetings, we know how much effort it takes. And it's especially in these times when everything is just more complicated than it was pre-pandemic. But I really encourage you, if you are interested and you do feel passionately about things, because I know that sometimes you come to planning commission meetings and it feels like this is kind of the last stop and it's frustrating. And I want people to feel empowered. And so to that end, I would encourage you to be as involved as you can with people at the state level. And that is in West Hollywood, that's Ben Allen, our state senator, and Richard Bloom, our state assembly member, as it stands right now. These are people who are affecting change at the state level with the development lobby and with people who are involved with affordable housing. And if this is something that you feel passionate about, and I know that so many of us do, I encourage you to be involved because a lot of times we use the phrase hands tied a lot here, but legally oftentimes that is very much the case. So talk to your representatives, talk to them about your concerns, reach out to them. I have had good experiences reaching out to their offices and I encourage you to do the same. So I don't want people to feel hopeless or that they're not being heard. I also just want people to understand the legal set of consideration criteria that we have to abide by as commissioners in the city of West Hollywood. That's all I wanted to say. You are heard, you are very much appreciated. We all live in this community together, but I do encourage you to get involved in as many places as you can, because a lot of times by the time it comes here, there's only so much that we can do. So use your vote, call your senator, call your representative. I'm off my soapbox now. And if we do not have any other commissioner comments, I'm going to give it here a minute. Looks like not. I am going to adjourn this meeting. We will adjourn to a regularly scheduled meeting on Thursday, September 15th, adjourning at the same time at 6:30 p.m. And I look forward to seeing all of you there then. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everybody. Good night.
Good evening. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.